When Aster was dragged to the Elmheim main house, he already knew this was not going to be a simple family meeting. The elders had called him there to judge him for the chaos he caused, and the moment he stood before them, the tension turned deadly. In front of the entire room, Zenith demanded proof of Hefried's loyalty by ordering him to kill his own son. But instead of bowing his head, Hefried chose Aster without hesitation, even if it meant the destruction of his entire house. That was the moment everything changed. With no more reason to stay silent, Aster tore off his shirt and revealed the 7 wings on his back, leaving the elders frozen in shock. The reason this power terrifies everyone is simple. The wing crest is the source of magical power, and no human in hundreds of years has ever possessed 7 wings. That level of power was said to belong only to the Spirit Clan, the very origin of the crests themselves. But how did he get this power? In a harsh, cold place, Aster, with a battered body, approaches his father, in an overwhelming killing intent, after claiming that his father sent him into an ambush to get rid of him. The man admits this, calling Aster a wingless one, which is why he has to die to stop bringing ridicule to the House of Elmheim. When talking about the Elmheim family, they are the greatest martial house on the continent, and they are tasked with protecting the royal family. The head of the house is Aster's father, Roderick Elmheim, who is the only one who has 7 wings in the entire kingdom. He once saved Aster, who was left on the brink of death in a snowstorm, and to pay this debt, Aster did everything Roderick asked of him. However, Aster had nothing to repay his father with because he had no wings. The wing crest is basically a proof of one's magical power, and the more wings, the greater the mana. Since he was the only one in the ducal house who had no wings, his siblings basically called Aster wingless. Nonetheless, Aster continued taking up the sword to practice every day, hoping that one day his devotion would be rewarded. In the end, he and his squad got sent on a mission that was destined to fail, but he managed to survive the ordeal. Now, he is wounded and exhausted, but he holds a grudge against his father, who discarded him. Aster tells Roderick that he believed in him and even followed him, but he stabbed him in the back as a reward. Roderick mocks him, asking him what expectations he, as a tool, thought he had, and he tells him to leave because he is done using him. However, deep down, Aster is raging with anger, and he dashes toward Roderick with his sword. He hates himself for following Roderick blindly while calling himself a pathetic idiot. Aster's sword lands on Roderick but leaves no single scratch. Suddenly, Aster is restrained from behind by a mana sword and 2 young men appear behind him. One of them cuts off his left arm, while the other cuts off his right leg. Aster screams in pain as he crashes to the ground with blood pouring out of his mouth. It turns out that these 2 are his brothers, and they mock him as he lies motionless in the snow, telling him that he will always remain wingless, no matter what happens. They even mock him, telling him that he looks so good while crawling on the ground. Aster punches the ground in frustration, asking Roderick why he bothered rescuing him when he was a baby, when he knew he was just going to discard him later on. Roderick bends down to tell Aster that he's getting everything wrong because he never had any use for him in the first place. Roderick mentions that what he needed was the power of the 7 wings that were residing inside Aster. Aster is confused by this, and Roderick adds that his mother was actually pretty useful because she bore the seed that would serve his purposes. After saying this, Roderick walks off, leaving Aster with several questions in his head. He stretches his hand toward Roderick, telling him to tell him everything, but his brothers finish him off with excitement by pushing their swords into his back. As he slowly loses consciousness, Aster questions his purpose if he was only born to die meaninglessly in the first place. Suddenly, everything becomes so warm, and by the time he opens his eyes again, he finds himself in thick snow. He looks around frantically and realizes that he is in a baby's body, leaving him wondering if this body is really his. Sleeping beside him is a dead woman who was clutching him in her arms. Aster uses the power of search to check everywhere, and he realizes that armed men are looking for him and the dead woman. Surprisingly, he hears that they are working for Roderick, and they plan to recover him so that they can return him to Roderick. This immediately jerks back his memory to what he was told about how he was found on a night just like that during a blizzard. It suddenly dawns on Aster that he might have returned to the past. However, he doesn't want to conclude yet, and he figures out that he will confirm this later, but he has to escape first. He knows that staying in the same position would only let him end up in Roderick's hands again. Even though he is a baby, Aster starts crawling through the harsh snow with mana infused in his hands, just so he can get away as fast as he can. Even though the weather is harsh and he is already getting tired, Aster has no desire to hold back because he was always crawling in his past life, and he plans to do the same thing to survive no matter what. After crawling so far, he ends up passing out, and moments later, he is discovered by Hefried, the head of House Hyfried, who is a viscount and his daughter. Hefried carries Aster in his hands, wondering why there is a baby in such a weird place. Hefried looks at the trail left in the snow by Aster and realizes just how far he has come, leaving him totally blown away. But at the same time, with questions of who Aster is. When Aster finally wakes up, he finds himself being stared at by a bunch of little girls who want to play with him. Aster panics because he can't understand what the actual hell is going on around him. Scared of whatever is going on, he jumps off and starts crawling away, but the girls chase after him, telling him to stop. Aster's survival instincts kick in and he continues crawling, aiming to get away from them. He ends up propelling himself into the sky with his magic, and he soon realizes that he is screwed as he starts descending to the ground with no way to stop it. Just when he is about to hit the ground and go splash, he is caught by the Viscount, who teases him for being a mysterious child. Sweat runs down his face with the realization that he almost died. Just then, Aster takes a look at the man, and this is when he realizes that he is in the hands of Hifrid, the Viscount of the Roderick domain. Aster freaks out because there is no way in the world he just found himself in another Elmheim house. Basically, Hifrid is the head of the Viscount family, which is a branch of the Elmheim family. He was one of the two wings that were once entrusted with protecting the royal family. However, Aster is even more confused because Hifrid should have died in some trash civil war, which ended in the total collapse of the Viscount family. This basically confirms his fear that he has gone back to the past. However, he is left in utter shambles because he was trying to run away from Roderick and ended up in his brother's hands. Hifrid's wife also carries Aster in her arms, talking about how surprised she is that Aster's magic went out of control to launch him into the sky. The woman figures out that Aster was trying to escape because he was scared, and she kisses him on the forehead to show him that he is in good hands. The woman strokes his cheeks, causing Aster to relax. Hifrid then tells his wife that Aster possesses tremendous power, and the crest on his back is proof of that. The woman takes Aster to the mirror to check out the crest on his back, and they are blown away to see that it is 7 wings. Even Aster is surprised that he has the crest of 7 wings on his body. This is when he remembers what Roderick told him before he was killed. Aster finally figures out that the dude basically saved him so he could take the 7 wings for himself. Aster is even more pissed when he realizes this because he was called a freaking wingless all through his past life just because Roderick stole what was his. Hifrid's wife then asks him what he plans to do with the child. The moment Aster hears this, he freaks out because he is not about to let the power fall into the Elmheim family since he needs it to get revenge on Roderick. Shockingly, Hifrid tells his wife that they should adopt Aster because he is still a young one who can't fly on their own. Hifrid mentions that he will take responsibility until Aster is able to take care of himself. Just then, the room's door opens and the girls crash on the floor, revealing that they have been listening all this time. The girls admit that they were curious because they were worried about Aster. The girls let off a bright smile because they finally have a baby brother. The woman of the house then gives him the name Aster. 10 years after this, Hifrid, Aster, and one of his sisters, Alfin, head to the sword dance assembly, which is held annually by a certain duke family under the Elmheim umbrella. It is basically a social gathering for martial arts noble families, and it is a place for nobles to deepen their faith, while showing off the strength of swordsman candidates who carry the family name. The moment Hifrid and his children arrive at the location, the other nobles and spectators waste no time as they start whispering. The people make fun of the Viscount family, saying they have come to embarrass themselves again. They also know about Aster, who was adopted into the family because they couldn't produce an heir of their own. They are pissed at just how much disgrace the Viscount family has brought to the Elmheim family. Alfin can hear everything they are saying behind their backs, and she urges Aster to stay strong and not let any of it get to him. Alfin tells Aster that whoever shows weakness is crushed, and while saying this, Aster can see her hands trembling from anger. Hifrid also tells Aster that what he is currently seeing is the current position of the Viscount family. Hifrid tells him that this is what he wanted to show him, and he asks him if he is disappointed by everything he has witnessed. However, Aster assures his father that he is fine with being in such a hostile environment. Hifrid laughs out loud when he hears this, telling Aster that his stance is quite reassuring. Apparently, in his past life, Aster made his debut in the social society as a disgrace to the Elmheim family, which is why where they are holds bitter memories. However, he is now a totally different person because the 7 wings have returned. Aster looks up to see his past brothers who killed him, staring at him from the window, and Aster is ultimately eager to make a glorious social debut. They are in an era where knights ruled, and might was the mastery of the blade, which was the absolute pinnacle of swordsmanship. Basically, the absolute symbol that embodied everything was none other than the wing crest. Standing on the balcony to watch the duels, Alfin talks about how overwhelming everything is. Alfin finally realizes why Furin and Flair were not interested in coming. Aster, on the other hand, can't forget how he was embarrassed during the whole thing in his past life. Alfin notices that he is lost in thought, and she calls his name to jerk him back to reality, asking if he is nervous. Alfin doesn't blame him if he is nervous because it is his first sword dance festival. Aster assures her that he is not nervous, but feels nostalgic instead. In fact, everything is loathsome to him. Hifrid then tells the kids that he has to leave because he has a meeting he needs to attend. Hifrid tells Aster that he is leaving his sister in his hands, but Alphen protests, reminding her father that she is a year older than Aster. Aster teases her, telling her that she is clumsy, which is why he is in charge. Hifrid then tells Aster that there are many people his age in the gathering, and he can use the opportunity to make friends and connections. However, he whispers to him, telling him to make sure that no one finds out about the 7 wings. As he walks off, Aster is left in a difficult position because he knows that what his father is asking him is easier said than done. In fact, Aster is left wondering how he is going to socialize when everyone appears to be hostile toward him. Suddenly, Alphen sees Aster walking away, and she asks him where he is heading. Aster replies that he is leaving to make some friends, and he soon arrives at where Roderick's sons are. The redhead, Dallas, asks Aster who he is, and Aster introduces himself to the dude with a smile on his face, revealing that he is his younger brother. Aster mentions that he saw Dallas from outside, and he decides to come say hello to him. Dallas is totally confused until his brother Grion explains to him that Aster is the kid adopted by the Viscount family. The moment Dallas figures out who Aster is, he starts laughing to mock him, saying he finally understands why Aster has the F initials in his name instead of the regular A initials. Aster stays mute because he can't forget how the two killed him in his past life. Aster can't believe that he was always intimidated by them in his past life, but looking at them now, he realizes that they are just a bunch of kids playing dress-up. Just then, Alphen shows up, telling Aster to leave the dudes alone. She's about to drag him away when Dallas calls her name to mock her too. He asks her if she is still hiding behind her father's back. He teases her, telling her to come over and keep them company, as if she were an escort. Alphen ultimately turns around to tell Dallas that she is not interested in whatever he is saying. She reminds Dallas that there is no master-servant relationship between the main and branch families. Alphen then proceeds to try to drag him away, even though Aster claims he is not done talking yet. Dallas decides to take things up a notch by mocking Alphen, telling his gang that Alphen's father was the knight who couldn't protect the king and had his hand cut off by Roderick as punishment. Dallas mocks her, telling her that he is glad he doesn't have the blood of a loser flowing through his veins. Alphen cannot swallow the insult, and she turns back, screaming at Dallas, telling him to take back what he just said because she is not just going to allow him to insult her father. Dallas piles on the misery by spitting out wine on her. Dallas tells Alphen that she was born into a family of nothing but useless women who can't inherit the title. He then adds that they are not in a ballroom, while telling her to wear some rags so that next time it won't be a problem when she gets drenched. Before coming to the gathering, Aster was initially worried that he wouldn't feel any anger even after seeing Dallas and Grion. However, what they just displayed has taken away his worry. Aster then calls Dallas's name before throwing a bottle of wine at him, and the moment he catches it, Aster cuts it in half with his sword, spilling the wine on Dallas's head. Dallas is shocked when this happens, and Aster just teases him, telling him that the content of the bottle is nothing more than grape juice, which fits a bratty noble like him. 3 years earlier, during a duel, Aster had lost control of his power, which almost resulted in the deaths of his sisters. It took Hifrid's intervention to be able to stop Aster's incredible power, and this was the first time Hifrid would see the 7 wings in action. Hifrid wonders if the power can even be controlled by him or by Aster himself. Now in the present day, Hifrid is still in the middle of the meeting when a servant rushes in to tell Hifrid that something is off. They ask the servant what the issue is, and he lets them know that the sons of the branch family and the main family are in a duel. Hifrid is shocked when he hears this, and he immediately rushes off. He meets Alphen on the way, and he asks her what happened. On the other hand, the elders of the family have rushed over to the arena to watch the duel. Alphen and Hifrid also join them as they stand on the balcony to watch the duel. The elders, on the other hand, are excited because they know how chaotic everything might become depending on the outcome of the duel. Dallas scolds Aster, calling him a fool for picking a fight with their ducal house. He reminds him that he is just a half-breed that was born in the wild. Dallas asks Aster if he is foolish enough not to understand the power difference between them because he wields a 4-wing crest. The people are blown away by Dallas's potential, and they believe that this is exactly why he is the ducal heir. Wielding 2 swords, Dallas teases Aster, telling him to show everyone his crest unless he is embarrassed to show it. Aster then replies that he is not as shameful as he, who is running around flaunting a mere pattern. Dallas is pissed when he hears this, but Aster is not done. Aster tells Dallas that he has to apologize to Alphen if he ends up winning the duel, and Dallas agrees to this, but he tells Aster that he is going to turn him into his own personal dog if he ends up winning. Dallas dashes toward Aster, threatening to work him to death after he wins the duel. He swings his sword at Aster, but Aster blocks the attack. Nonetheless, the force from the attack is powerful enough to push Aster backwards and leave his hands vibrating. Dallas goes on the attack again while telling Aster that what he is witnessing is the power of the 4-wing crest. He continues swinging at him, forcing Aster to maintain a defensive posture. One of the elders watching the fight admits that Dallas's swordsmanship is immature, but he is able to compensate for it with his overwhelming magical power, which is why those who bear the crest will always have an advantage. In simple analogy, if the magic housed in one wing crest is like the flame of a candle, then the magic hidden within 4 wings is more or less an explosion. Dallas keeps up the pressure, overwhelming Aster and asking him where his initial excitement disappeared to. He asks him if he wasn't threatening to make him apologize before. Dallas continues teasing Aster while swinging at him, urging him to show him his power. Moments later, Dallas lands what he believes would have ended the duel, but Aster blocks the strike as aura swells around his body. Aster sends Dallas flying backward while telling him that he talks too much. Aster has basically been learning for the past 10 years, just so he can get the chance to enact vengeance on those who have wronged him. Aster leaps toward Dallas, landing a powerful strike that causes Dallas to lose balance. Dallas crashes to his knees, trying to block the attack, and Grion is shocked to see that his brother is being pushed back. Dallas cannot believe what is happening to him since he is a 4-winged crest owner, but he is being overwhelmed by someone he calls a lowlife. Everyone watching the fight is left in shock as Dallas tries hard to stay in the fight. On the other hand, Hifrid is worried that things are going to get really bad. Aster looks totally immersed in the fight as he remembers how Dallas and Grion took his arm in his past life before killing him. Seeing his life flash before his eyes, Dallas starts begging, telling Aster to stop, and at the same time, the Viscount screams at Aster, telling him to restrain himself. The clash between the two ends in a massive explosion, and when the smoke clears, Aster has cut off Dallas's sword. He barely missed his head and only smacked the sword in between his legs. Seeing just how close he is to death, Dallas soiled himself, and Aster mocks him just as he mocked Alphen. He tells him to come wrapped in rags the next time so he doesn't mind getting soaked. Aster sheathes his sword with the declaration that he is no longer Aster the Wingless, and just by realizing this, he is relieved already. Suddenly, Aster feels an overwhelming presence behind him, and when he turns around, he realizes that it is none other than his arch-nemesis, Roderick. Meanwhile, the spectators are all left in shock because no one expected Aster, who is from the Branch family, to knock out the son of the main family. However, they know things have gotten complicated because there is no way Roderick is going to stay silent after getting dragged through the mud. Roderick walks into the arena and moves toward Aster, but Aster doesn't even take his head down as he stares into Roderick's eyes. Roderick stands towering over him, but Aster maintains his aura as he looks into the man's eyes. Dallas then grabs his father, whom he believes is there to help him. Just like the spoiled brat he is, he tells his father that Aster has defied the main family even though he is a half-breed. Dallas urges his father to use his power to deal with Aster, but suddenly, Roderick pushes his sword into Dallas's hand. He pushes his hand into the ground with the sword in it, ultimately shattering his right hand. Everyone watching this, including Grion, is left in shock, and Roderick berates Dallas, telling him that he has just dragged the name of their family through the mud, but he still has the guts to smile. Roderick then pulls out his sword, and Hifrid has an idea of where this is going. He screams at Roderick, telling him to stop, but Roderick raises his sword, ready to cut down his son for embarrassing him, while telling him that he doesn't have what it takes to hold a sword. Just then, Aster jumps in between Dallas and his father, and Roderick asks him why he is interrupting his judgment on Dallas. Aster replies that Dallas hasn't apologized to Alphen yet, so he can't die. He tells Roderick that he is free to do whatever he wants to Dallas after he has apologized to Alphen. Roderick is pissed that Aster is trying to act like he is a member of the family, even though he was adopted. Aster replies, telling him that he is the son of the Viscount, and even if they are not related by blood, the pride of a knight and the weight of a household are things that he has learned well enough from his father. Roderick then decides to use this against Aster, telling him that as a member of the Viscount's house, he has needlessly tarnished the reputation of the main family, which is the pride of the king's sword. Roderick tells Aster that what just happened is not something that can be settled as a mere childhood squabble. He reminds him that Hifrid gave his arm as a prize when he messed up. Roderick then asks him what he plans to sacrifice, but Aster replies to this by telling Roderick that what happened wasn't a mere sibling quarrel, but a legitimate duel. Aster tells Roderick that all he did was answer the insults against the house of the Viscount with his blade. He reminds Roderick of what he said about those who can't avenge themselves have no right to a sword. Aster makes it clear that he has no intention of throwing away even a single strand of his hair. One of the elders, who is an earl, is blown away by Aster's courage, and he refuses to believe that Aster is just 10 years old. Upon hearing what Aster has to say, Roderick tells him to take his stance, and Aster immediately gets into a defensive position. Roderick then lands a hit that sends Aster crashing into the wall, leaving a loud explosion. This leaves everyone shocked and scared that Aster is done for. Hifrid angrily leaps toward his brother with his sword, but Roderick blocks the attack. Hifrid ignores Roderick and rushes over to where Aster is. The dust clears off and he sees Aster's severed sword on the ground, but to his surprise, Aster remains standing with the other half of the sword in his hand, ready to defend himself. He wears an expression of hate on his face, and when Roderick sees this, he just turns around and leaves with Dallas following him. Aster finally loses his balance, but Hyfried catches him. With the last of his strength, Aster tells his father that he protected Alfin just like he promised, and Hyfried commends Aster, telling him that he was magnificent. On the other hand, one of the elders teases Roderick, telling him that he resorted to a childish move. Roderick agrees to this, but says the family's reputation would have been shattered if he had let Aster have his way, which is why he made a slight compromise. The elder then calls Aster a rising star because he had the strength and audacity to stand before the great Roderick. The elders admit that Aster has the best debut into society with the stunt he just pulled. One of the elders says he was actually scared that the Elmheim family might split in two. However, Roderick tells him not to be too happy yet because an era of disruption is upon them. He calls it a storm so great it might divide the world into 2 or 3. When Aster returned to the territory, he indulged himself totally in training. He beats up every one of his sparring partners really easily, with no one to stand against him. They believe that whatever happened at the sword dance assembly must have been a motivation for him. The servants and guards are also happy that Aster beat Dallas up because the main family has been making life hard for them for so long. At the same time, Aster is confident that what he did at the assembly would silence those who have always mocked the Viscount family. However, his real target remains Roderick himself. Although he knows he can't beat Roderick with his current level, Aster knows that the wing crest is basically just an indicator of one's rank and latent magic power. However, Aster still cannot draw out the power of the 7 wings. It is known that being born with or not doesn't mean anything if one can use the power to its full potential. Aster wishes that he could test the full power of the 7 wings to its limits without wondering about it rampaging. Before he knows it, he has defeated everyone on the training grounds, and just then, Alfin shows up. She tells Aster that their father is calling for him, and Aster immediately drops everything he is doing. As he walks off, he notices that his sister is wearing a training outfit. He teases her, reminding her that she said the outfit wasn't good, so she hated wearing it. Alfin tells her brother that everything needs balance, and seeing Aster made her rethink that she can't keep going the way she is. She then tells Aster that he would have to train with her when he gets back, and Aster smiles, while urging his sister to go easy on him. Moments later, Aster arrives at his father's office and asks him what he needs. Hyfried tells him to sit down, and when he does, Hyfried reminds Aster that it's been about 10 years since they welcomed him into the family. His father says he was waiting for him to be a bit grown before, but he has changed his mind. He brings out a ring with a red jewel on it and tells Aster that it is the proof of the next head. Hyfried drops the bomb on him, telling him that he wants him to be the next head of the family. Aster says nothing when he hears this, and Hyfried continues by reminding Aster that the Viscount house is in a precarious position. Nonetheless, they are still a branch of the Elmheim family, and since they have their own territory to protect, Hyfried says they can't leave the next head's seat empty. Aster then asks his father if his sisters are okay with this, and Hyfried mentions that he is going to go to the Knight Academy to inform his sisters. Aster replies that he is pretty sure that his sisters, Malfa and Kudo, who are at the Knight Academy, would disagree, especially Kudo. Aster mentions that Kudo basically hates him for being born a boy, not to mention being blessed with the 7 wings. Aster then stands up, telling his father that he can't accept the responsibility of being the next head. He reminds him that he can't even control his magic, and he almost killed his own sister in the process. Aster tells his father that there is nothing that can convince an angry sister, and as he walks away, Hyfried tells him that he has always been skeptical whether Aster is really a kid or not. Hyfried then reveals that he believed that the ring would be a good reward for the sword dance assembly, but it appears that Aster would prefer something else. The man then brings out a box, and he opens it to reveal the magic sword, Gram, which is more or less a dagger. Hyfried tells Aster that this is a sword that can control the 7 wings' power. After their meeting in the office, Hyfried takes Aster into the woods. Aster is surprised that they have to go that far just to show him a sword, and Hyfried lets him know that this is nothing more than a precaution. Hyfried knows he can't take anything for granted since Aster is known to break things quite often, which means the training hall would be the wrong place to try out the sword. Hyfried tells Aster that Gram is a magic sword that is passed down only to the eldest son of the Elmheim family. Hyfried mentions that he intentionally had the sword brought in from the main house because of him. Hyfried then removes the cloth that sheathes the sword, and Aster is shocked to see that it is just a sword with a short base. Hyfried tells Aster that the sword might have no blade, but if he imbues it with magic power, the blade has the potential of being completed by the wielder's magic power. Hyfried then shows him an example of what he is saying by unleashing his magic power, which releases a massive energy blast that destroys everything in its path. This leaves a huge crater in the ground, and Hyfried tells Aster that one would be drained by the sword if one tries to trash magic with it instead. Hifrid mentions that it is a sword with so much history, and he asks Aster if he is willing to give it a try. Aster then collects the sword and he tries it out. To his surprise, his mana starts pouring into the sword on its own, and this sends a powerful blast into the sky. Those at the estate see this, and one of the guards assumes that a comet is falling from the sky. However, his colleague teases him for being dull, saying something flew into the sky, not falling from it. The dude doesn't want to believe this, and Alfin cuts in, telling them that the phenomenon must have been caused by Aster. Back in the woods, Aster is blown away by how powerful the sword is, but Hifrid corrects him, telling him that his magic is what is extraordinary, and not the sword itself. He mentions that there has never been a single person possessing the seven-wing crest throughout the entire history of the Elmheim family lineage. Hifrid believes that Aster will have the power to surpass even Roderick once he masters his power. However, the power also has what it takes to sow seeds of conflict because of its greatness. He lets Aster know that everyone will be after him if they find out that he possesses the seven wings. He says there will be some who will want to exploit him, and there will be some who would want to kill him under the guise that he is a nuisance. Hifrid then urges Aster to make sure he becomes really strong while he still can to avoid something like this. Aster agrees with his father because he is not ready to live a miserable life, just like he did in his previous one. Aster then thanks his father for the gift, assuring him that he is going to master the seven wings and the sword. 3 days later, Kudo and Malfa returned from the Knight Academy. Kudo stretches out her hand, waiting for her younger sisters to rush over to her, but the two run past her and head to Malfa instead. Kudo is surprised that she was ignored, and when she challenges the two about this, they tell her that she is always messing up their hair. However, Kudo doesn't want to accept that a modest person like her would do such a thing. Just then, she spots Alfin and rushes over to hug her. She ends up doing what she claims she doesn't do by roughing up Alfin's hair. Malfa then asks her parents where Aster is. Hifrid then reveals where Aster is, and Kudo immediately locks in on this. Meanwhile, Aster is still struggling to keep the sword under control. He is suffering from excessive magic power loss just from trying to do this, and he starts wondering what he has to do to become like his father. He is in the middle of this when Kudo shows up with her sword, telling Aster that he has managed to outdo himself this time around. Aster is shocked to see that his sister is back, and Kudo scolds him for not coming over to welcome her. Kudo asks him if he didn't show up to welcome them because he thinks he is special and there is no reason to notice them. Kudo lets Aster know that she learned about what happened at the sword dance assembly because the Knight Academy was buzzing with rumors about him. Aster then replies that he is pretty sure that the same thing applies to his sister because he heard that, as a trainee, she has completed numerous missions. In addition, Kudo was the only knight awarded the honorary knight medal that year. Kudo then replies that it is the least she can do because if she doesn't, she wouldn't be able to succeed her father. She then proceeds to say she heard about how Aster turned down the offer to be the successor. She asks him if he did this for her sake. Deep down, Aster is not pleased with the fact that Hifrid went ahead to tell her because this is just going to cause him unnecessary trouble. Aster finally replies to his sister, telling her that he believed that he wasn't worthy yet, which is why he rejected the offer. Kudo walks toward a tree, talking about how spiteful Aster and Hifrid are, even though they know that it is her dream to become the head of the house. Suddenly, she cuts the tree with her sword before hurling it toward Aster. Aster barely dodges the attack while screaming at his sister, asking her what the hell she is trying to do. Kudo tells Aster that it's been a long time since they sparred, so she is about to give him a test. She lets him know that the next attack will be directed at him. Aster tries to tell his sister to chill out because the sword he is using is not yet complete, but Kudo lets him know that he won't be able to make the same excuse if he is on the battlefield while facing an enemy. Kudo lets Aster know that it is the knight's code to always be ready for battle, and Kudo immediately gets into an offensive position. She tells Aster that she might just obliterate him if he keeps holding back. Aster cannot believe his eyes because he is still trying to control his magic power, and his sister is already onto him. At the same time, he knows he has no choice but to take his sister seriously because if he doesn't, she might just kill him. Minutes later, Aster and Kudo are still going at it. Kudo commends Aster, telling him that he has gotten better because he is able to keep up with her, even though she has refined her skills at the Knight Academy. However, she trolls Aster, telling him that his sword is pretty much pathetic and his control over magic is completely lacking. Kudo sends him into the distance with a strike, and Aster admits that his sister is as relentless as she has always been. He remembers that she's been like that since they were kids. He wonders if it is because he is the only male in the Viscount's house who holds the right of succession. At the same time, he doesn't know if it is because he possesses the seven-wing crest, which is superior to everyone else's. Aster compares her to a living storm because she is always challenging him to duel over every little thing while calling the world unfair. Basically, Kudo is his natural enemy. Kudo comes charging at him again while telling him that he is not fit to be the next head of the house. Meanwhile, Malfa is worried about the two, and she calls her father's attention to this. She asks him if he is ready to leave the two alone to themselves because, with the way things are going, one of them might just die. Hifrid tells Malfa that they are rivals in their own ways, and even though they might be a bit reckless, he is confident that it won't escalate to the point where one of them would die. Malfa replies that she certainly hopes so, and then asks her father why he summoned them back from the Night Academy. She is pretty sure that it is not all about the succession. Hifrid confirms this, and then brings out a letter which shocks Malfa. It turns out that it is a summons from the Elmheim main house. He tells Malfa that the elders who lead the house might actually want to see their grandson's face. Malfa is relieved to hear this, but Hifrid lets her know that in the worst-case scenario, they might actually lose Aster. Back in the woods, Aster urges his sister to try to reason with him because he has already turned down the talk of succession. He tells her that their father must have informed her about it, but Kudo reveals that Hifrid is not ready to agree with his stance. Aster soon finds himself trying to block Kudo's overwhelming attack, which he compares to facing a troll swinging a giant mallet. Aster almost gets cut, but he manages to weave Kudo's sword to the side. He screams at her, telling her to listen to what he has to say. However, Kudo hits him with a blunt strike that is powerful enough to rupture his insides. Aster coughs up blood with the realization that his sister is pretty strong. Kudo then explains to him that he is third-rate if all he can do is swing a sword. In addition, he is second-rate if he can handle only magic, and it is when he is able to master both sword and magic that he can become first-rate. Kudo lets him know that she is disappointed in him because the difference in wing crests refers to the difference in the amount of mana that one can handle. Basically, the difference between one wing is about a threefold gap in power, which means in terms of magical output and stamina, Kudo should be inferior to Aster since she has just 5 wings. Because of this, Kudo scolds Aster, telling him that he should have been able to withstand all of her attacks, but he chose to run back to his favorite swordsmanship instead. Kudo asks Aster if he really distrusts his power that much, or if he is afraid he would go berserk just like he did some years back. The moment Aster hears this, he realizes that he has never once considered that he might be afraid of the 7 Wings' power. He wonders if he was unconsciously putting a limit on his own power, which is why the blade feels unstable. He was basically forcibly suppressing his magic under the fear that things might go out of hand. Kudo then tells Aster that he basically has everything she ever wanted, and she lunges at him, telling him to give her all of his power if he is so afraid to let it out. However, things are already different as Aster easily knocks her back with his magic power. Even Kudo is shocked to see this, and Aster thanks her, telling her that she has opened his eyes. Aster then dashes toward Kudo without manifesting a blade, leaving Kudo to wonder if he has run out of mana, but she trashes this thought because she is pretty sure that he hasn't. Aster basically has an inexhaustible magic lying inside the 7 Wings, and even though he can't fully master it yet, he plans to focus all of the magic into an immediate impact at that moment. He lands his hit, but Kudo blocks it while teasing him, telling him that it is commendable that he was able to think of something like that on his feet. Aster then lets his sister know that he has no intention of wasting his second life, his power, his sword, and certainly not his family. He reveals that he is going to hold on to all of these because he struggled to have them in the past. Kudo is left confused by what her brother means by the second life he is talking about. Suddenly, Aster leaps toward her, and she prepares a counterattack for him. Suddenly, Aster vanishes, and by the time he reappears, he lets his sister know that he is no longer holding back. He swings really hard at Kudo, and Kudo feels the sword passing through her midsection like she has been cut in half. Later on, Kudo wakes up in her room, and she is confused as to how she made it into her room. Surprisingly, Malfa is in her room, and she welcomes Kudo back to life. It then dawns on Kudo that she was in the middle of a duel, and she asks Malfa what happened. Malfa reveals that Aster was the one who carried her back to the estate, revealing that Kudo had fallen asleep during the duel. Aster believed that the fatigue from the journey had caught up to her, but Kudo disagreed with this. Kudo then remembers that moment in the duel where it appeared that Aster had cut her down. She realizes that Aster dispelled his mana blade just in time before impact. She figures out that what she felt was the lingering residue of the mana passing through her body. She heaves a sigh of relief that Aster wouldn't have killed her in the first place, since they are siblings. However, at that moment, she actually feared that Aster would kill her. Kudo cannot take away the idea that her brother is really spiteful, even though he is smaller than she is. Kudo then grabs her sword, demanding to know where Aster is because the duel is not yet over. Malfa shocks her by telling her that Aster is no longer in the estate. Kudo is confused by this, and Malfa lets her know that a summons arrived for Aster from the main house, which is why he left a little while ago with their father. Kudo freaks out in shock because no one said anything about this to her. Meanwhile, Aster and Hifrid are in a carriage, heading to the main house. Hifrid tells him that the people they are about to meet are the elders who support the Elmheim house from the shadows. He mentions that they are former heads of the main and branch families, which means that they are influential figures from across the Elmheim house. Hifrid assures Aster that they are still pretty much in control, even though they have retired, which is why they are known as the Shadow Rulers. Hifrid tells Aster that these rulers haven't even shown any interest in Aster since the day he adopted him, leaving him confused as to why they have suddenly summoned him. Aster tells his father that it is most likely because of what happened at the Sword Dance Festival. He continues by saying he's heard that the Elmheim elders value the family's prestige more than gold or even their own lives. Apparently, anyone who tarnishes this image is thrown into a cage to become food for beasts. Hifrid is shocked that Aster knows this, and he asks him where he heard it. Aster gives a nervous reply that doesn't answer the question before revealing that he has prepared himself for some form of punishment or exile at the very least. Hifrid asks him if he is sure that he is ready to leave without saying goodbye, and Aster assures him that he is. He mentions that he was already planning to leave the moment his sisters arrived. In addition, he is pretty sure that Kudo doesn't like it when he is around because he annoys her, which means she will be able to relax once he is gone. Aster adds that thanks to Kudo, he has finally started to get the hang of handling Graham, and he is convinced that he can draw out more of the Seven Wings' power than before. He tells his father not to try to help him from that moment forward, no matter what happens, because he is prepared to survive on his own. Suddenly, Kudo shows up by the window of the carriage, telling Aster that he is the youngest, so he doesn't have to act all high and mighty. Aster is shocked to see his sister, who is hanging by the carriage like a bug. Kudo flings the door open, and Aster is shocked that the redhead ran all the way to catch up to them. Kudo scolds Aster, telling him that it is cruel of him to have left his sister without a single word. Kudo mentions that he heard that he has been summoned by the great elders of the main house, which is a big thing, since she and Malfa haven't even been called up before. Hifrid then tells Kudo that he can't take her along to the main house, and she assures him that she is aware of this, which is why their father recalled them from the academy because he wants them to watch over things while he is away. Kudo adds that she is aware that the summons means he is in a situation that requires a great deal of caution. In fact, Malfa said there is the possibility that Aster might not even come back. Aster tries to tone down the gravity of the situation, telling Kudo that she is just exaggerating because he is just going there to talk. Deep down, Aster knows that his safe return is not guaranteed. Kudo then tells Aster that she absolutely hates his guts because he is a boy, he has the 7 wings, he is always given special treatment. He is even stronger than her, even though she is older, and he can act like a grown-up, even though he is her little brother. Kudo admits that she hates everything, but nonetheless, Kudo says she can't throw away the fact that Aster is her family. Kudo tells Aster that he might act all tough and grown up, but it doesn't remove the fact that he is her little brother. Kudo urges Aster to make sure he comes back to the estate because she still wants them to duel, and as she leaves, she assures Aster that she is not going to make it easy for him the next time. She leaps out of the carriage, and Aster watches as she leaves, wondering what it is that she came to say. Nonetheless, he is thankful for her, and he makes the silent decision to return to the family. Kudo stands behind the carriage and waves at it as it gets farther away, showing just how much she cares about her little brother. Soon afterward, they arrive at the main house, and they are welcomed by armed guards. They tell Hifrid that the elders are already waiting for him inside, and Hifrid tells them that there is no need for them to escort him because he knows his way around. However, the guards let him know they have been ordered to ensure that they bring him and Aster to the waiting room. With this, Hifrid confirms that he and Aster were not summoned because they wanted to have a good time with their grandchild. Nonetheless, it still brings back memories of the last time he was home. As they walk through the lobby, Hifrid urges Aster not to lose his cool because it would be the worst day for him to flare up in anger. Aster replies that he would behave himself as long as they don't say anything or do anything that warrants him to be angry. Hifrid agrees to this and tells Aster that it is the same reason he is trying to tell him that the person they are about to meet is the problem. While revealing who it is that they want to meet, Aster is completely carried away with those in the training grounds. Hifrid is forced to call his name to jerk him back to reality. Upon arriving at the door, the two are required to surrender their weapons. The moment they enter the room, they are welcomed by the elder, who teases Hifrid for not coming to the house for the past 10 years. Hifrid then bows to the old man, whom he addresses as his great-grandfather, the 6th head of the house. Aster finally realizes who has been controlling things from the shadows, the great-grandfather, Zennis Elmheim. Aster also believes that the rest of the gang are heavyweights who have the deciding factor over Elmheim. With a quick look, he realizes that there are some people from the Sword Dance Assembly who are present, but he is surprised that Roderick is not there. Zennis can see the confused look on his face, and he tells him that Roderick is not there. He reveals that Roderick is the leader of the knights directly under the royal family, which means he has no time for all the meaningless meetings that they are holding. In return, Zennis and the other old farts are the ones handling the administrative side of things. Aster remembers that in his past life, he never saw Zennis. which is why he didn't really care, but he can clearly see the influence that he holds because he is still able to gather so many important fellows to a meeting. Hifrid then asks Zenith why they are there, and Zenith replies that he is pretty sure that he has figured it out already. Zenith mentions that he heard that Aster caused quite a scene at the sword dance festival. This immediately confirms Aster's suspicion that they were summoned because of what he did. Hifrid then tells Zenith that Roderick should have settled what happened personally. The elders present in the room tell Hifrid that what Roderick did was nothing more than a performance for the public, and it doesn't change the fact that the Elmheim name has been tarnished. One adds that inviting Aster, who is an adoptee from an unknown origin, to the family gathering is a mistake from the start. They tell Hifrid that they would have looked the other way if he had remained harmless, but the moment he bared his fangs at the main family, it changed the entire dynamic of things. Zenith mentions that the right thing is to exile Aster, but lets Hifrid know that he is also going to be punished. It is at this moment that Aster gets on his feet to scream at the elders, telling them that he was the one who did everything, and it has nothing to do with his father. Aster is crashing out when he turns to the side to see that his father is not even saying anything. Aster stops talking, wondering what is wrong with him. The elders then scold Aster, telling him that he is indisciplined because he had the guts to butt into an adult conversation. Zenith then stands up to tell Aster that everyone in the room carries the weight of the house on their shoulders. However, he reveals that the knights are not a monolith because there are countless others watching from the shadows, waiting for a chance to snatch the top seat. Zenith mentions that this doesn't exclude those in the room. Zenith walks toward Aster, telling him that they need proof he is not a threat to the house. Zenith then pulls out a sword, which he hands over to Hifrid. He reminds him of what he did when he failed to protect the king, which ended up dragging the family's name through the mud. It turns out that it was in this same room that he allowed Roderick to cut down his arm. This time around, Zenith tells Hifrid that he wants him to show his loyalty by taking Aster's head. Zenith assures Hifrid that if he does this, the matter will be dropped. But he hasn't finished saying this when Hifrid tells him that he is not interested in taking Aster's life. Hifrid tells the old man that he would rather take his own life than cut down his own child. Aster is shocked when he hears this, and Zenith tells Hifrid that he has to die since he has refused to kill Aster. In fact, Zenith ultimately declares that it is the end for Hifrid's house because everyone, down to his children, will be killed. Just then, Aster coldly asks Zenith what it is that he is so afraid of. Zenith turns back in confusion, and Aster continues by saying they are all a group of grown men who are huddled together in fear, which is really pathetic. Aster tells Zenith that they are free to exile him if they are so scared that he would come back to hunt them. Just then, Aster takes off his shirt to reveal his 7 wings to let the group know what they are going to be facing if they intend to touch his family. The entire room is left in shock, and deep down, Aster can only apologize to his father because even though he was told to keep quiet, he couldn't. With the crests on his back shining brightly, Aster tells the room that it would be best for them to think twice before making an enemy of him. The elders and guards don't want to believe what is right in front of them, and they even assume that it is fake because this is the first time it will appear on a human body in hundreds of years. With a cold voice, Zenith asks Aster if he understands the weight of the mark that he carries, and Aster assures him that he knows because he's heard that people get more surprised the more wings that one has. The Earl, who remains on his seat, laughs out loud when he hears this, but quickly offers his apologies before telling them to continue their charade. Zenith then explains to Aster that a crest is an organ that generates magical power, which was gifted to humans by spirits in ancient times. Humans have been able to make use of their strength pretty well by passing it down generations, but no human has been able to reach 7 wings, with the sole exception of the Spirit Clan, the progenitors of the crests themselves. Aster then asks Zenith if he is suggesting that he is a member of the Spirit Clan, and Zenith says there is a possibility if it is actually true that his wings are real. Aster replies to the old man, telling him that he is Hifrid's son, and at the moment, he doesn't care about the circumstances of his birth. Aster tells Zenith that all he wants to know is if he is prepared to have him as an enemy or not. Aster mentions that there would be plenty of noble houses ready to take him in if there is ever a chance that he is expelled from Elmheim. Aster lets Zenith know that this would be bad for him because they are scared of rebellion already, which means it would be better to keep him around, since he is the symbol of the 7 wings, who surpasses even the great Roderick. Everyone is left speechless by everything Aster just said, and deep down, Aster knows how to play his game. He remembers the old man talking about a rebellion, and it is no joke that a rebellion is actually coming. It is a massive civil war that will engulf the entire country, and since he already knows what is going to happen thanks to his past life, Aster is prepared to know at that moment who is an ally or an enemy so that the Viscount house can survive. Zenith finally scoffs and asks Aster if he thinks he is that important. He mentions that there is no proof whatsoever that the 7 wings he carries are real, and Aster tells him that he is free to kill him if he doesn't believe him. However, he lets him know that this will only mean war between him and the elders. Deep down, Aster knows that Elmheim would have no issues killing him if they really want to, but he wants to see if they are going to take the bait or not. Just then, the Earl, Maze, claps his hand and gets off his seat, telling Zenas that it would be better if they set a trial for Aster. The elders scream at Maze, asking him what he is trying to say, and Maze asks them if they are ready to see the power of the seven wings or not. They ask him what he means by this, and he reminds them that they are in the greatest martial clan, which means there must be a couple of suitable trials lying around in the estate. Seeing this, Aster immediately figures out that Maze is an ally. Surprisingly, the old man agrees to Maze's suggestion, and he tells Aster to follow him because disciplining a grandson who doesn't know how to hold his tongue is his duty as his grandfather. Moments later, they arrive at the trial grounds, which are somewhat dark. Zenas shows Aster an underground path that leads to the waterways, which used to be an evacuation shelter for emergencies, but Zenas now keeps a magic beast locked in there. Zenas tells Aster that the trial is simple and it is for him to defeat the magic beast. Hifrid sighs in frustration, and he reminds Aster that he told him to keep the existence of the seven wings a secret, but Aster lets his father know that he can't continue keeping something so flashy a secret forever. As he rappels down the hole, Hifrid tells him not to let his guard down. Aster's eyes lock with Maze's, and he can see the interest in his eyes as he goes down the underground path. Upon getting to the bottom, Aster notices something cold, and this is when he sees Dallas's head lying around on the ground. This shocks him to his bones, and Zenas reveals that he also gave Dallas the chance to redeem his honor, but he did nothing but cry until the very end, which was quite unbearable to watch. Zenas urges Aster not to disappoint him, and just then a blue magical beast appears right in front of Aster, and it lets out a loud roar that lets Aster know that he is truly up for a serious trial. Even though Dallas was quite annoying, Aster actually pities him. Just then, the beast comes dashing at Aster, but he cuts it into pieces with just a swing of his sword, leaving the spectators speechless. Aster sheathes his sword, admitting that the beast might be scary, but his sister is scarier. Suddenly, something strange happens, and by the time Aster turns around, he realizes that the beast is back together, which means it is a freaking undead. Hifrid screams out in fear, asking Zenas why such a terrifying beast is lying around in the basement of the estate. Zenas then reveals that the undead are drawn to the scent of death, and it must have thought it could have the best life in the estate, which is why it crawled to the basement. Since the beast won't die if one cuts it 1,000 times, Zenas had it captured, thinking it would be the perfect opponent to test one's strength. Zenas says it is thanks to this that they no longer have trouble disposing of corpses. One of the elders expresses his fear, revealing that an undead is a handful for even a skilled knight to capture, but Zenas is clearly telling Aster to kill it. They ask Zenas if he intends to watch the child of the seven wings die, but Zenas tells them that it would mean Aster is a fake if he actually dies to the beast. Zenas then adds that even if Aster dies, it only makes things convenient for them because there are ways. Maze, on the other hand, is worried, and he hopes that Aster does his best not to die. Back in the basement, Aster has slashed the beast loads of time, but there is no progress whatsoever. The beast's regenerative power is overwhelming compared to that of a normal undead. In addition, an undead is already dead, which means to kill it completely, one either burns it to death with sunlight or one must purify it with a weapon imbued with holiness. And if one cannot do either, it is advised to just run away because fighting an undead is pretty useless. However, in Aster's case, he knows that there is no path for retreat. He figures out that using conventional means doesn't complement the fact that he has the Seven Wings power residing in him. This basically means he has to crush the undead with overwhelming force to show them what he is capable of. Aster unleashes a powerful attack that leaves the elders jumping in their seats because they are finally getting to see the power of the Seven Wings. Aster's last attack leaves a cloud of dust that surrounds the basement, leaving the spectators wondering what is happening. By the time the dust clears off, the beast is still active, and before Aster can react, the beast knocks him to the ground. Hifrid calls his name in fear, and Maze urges Hifrid not to try to jump in to save Aster. Hifrid asks the Earl if he is suggesting that he watch his son die, but Maze tells him to calm down and have a look at what is going on. Maze can see the smile on Aster's face, and he believes that he has a trump card he hasn't used yet. With the beast on top of him, Aster raises his sword and imbues it with mana, firing off a powerful energy blast into his body just like his father did in the woods. The beast coughs out blood as its insides are ruptured by the blast. Since the beast has refused to die, Aster plans to keep peeling away its life force until it finally dies. Hifrid is shocked when he sees what Aster is doing because he only showed him that method once, but he is even taking it to another level. Thanks to the amount of energy that Aster is firing off, the whole area starts to shake, as if it is about to collapse. Some of the elders want to run away in fear and they call Zenas to join them, but Zenas is totally immersed in what he is watching. Zenas is blown away by the overwhelming power emanating from Aster's body, and he finally understands the power of the Seven Wings. Moments later, the panicking elders finally get back on their feet when there is no rumbling again. They rushed over to check what had happened, but Zenos didn't move an inch, and he witnessed everything. He realizes that Aster caught the undead in a vortex of magical power and wiped them out. Zenos can only agree that it was a brute force display of pure quality as well as quantity, which is an incredible magical feat, but doesn't essentially qualify as a technique. This leaves Zenos wondering if this is really the power of the Seven Wings. Zenos then asks Hifrid if he was the one who taught Aster what he just did, but Hifrid says no. He admits that he is also amazed at how much his son grows by the day. Maze quickly asks the elder if he is satisfied and if he believes that Aster has passed the exam. With a stern face and expression, Zenos asks the rest of the group if there is anyone who objects, but none do. Maze wastes no time announcing to Aster that he passed the test and that he should return to the surface quickly. Aster teases them, pointing out the fact that the chain that lowered him into the underground basement has been destroyed, so he urges someone to throw a rope for him to use. Later on, Aster meets with Zenos in his office, and Zenos offers him a spot in the succession to the head of the family, but Aster rejects the offer. Zenos asks him if he is sure that this is what he wants, because the moment he misses this chance, it might not come back. Aster lets the man know that he has no interest in the succession struggle of the family, and in addition, his presence would only cause unrest among his cousins. Aster tells Zenos that he doesn't belong in the main estate, but in Hifrid's manor. Just then, Zenos tells him that he can be humble all he wants, but he cannot hide the ambition reflected in his eyes. Zenos says it is all over his face that he intends to turn his hostility toward Elmheim in the long run, and this shocks Aster. Zenos asks him if the person he is after is Roderick, but Aster's expression immediately becomes defensive. The old man urges him to relax, assuring him that he has no intention of probing into his motives at the moment. Aster then asks him why, because he believes that the rebels are his enemies. Zenos then reminds him that the house is not a monolith and Roderick is a bit of a problem. Zenos has no issue having Aster around if his existence serves as a deterrent to Roderick. However, he warns Aster never to bare his fangs at him again because this is where he might actually die. As Aster leaves the room, he cannot help but admit that the old man is a monster. Hifrid meets him in the hallway and he asks him what the old man said. Aster reveals that the old man wanted to induct him into the main family, but he refused the offer. Hifrid is shocked to hear this, and even Maze, who is with him, agrees. Maze tells Aster that he would have enjoyed much better treatment if he were officially under the main family's care. Aster then asks the Earl why he helped him earlier, but Maze feigns ignorance on this. Maze claims that he only wanted to play a trick on him, and he reminds Aster that he has truly become the master of the Seven Wings in name. As they walk through the hallway, Aster can see the elders staring at him, and they all have the same intention of getting Aster under their thumbs since he is a child. Maze tells Aster that he cannot avoid it because those targeting him will only increase since the Seven Wings carry immense importance. Aster then asks Maze if he is one of them, and Maze replies that he is a director at the Night Academy, so scouting promising youths is part of his job. Maze points to the blonde old man in the distance, telling Aster that the man is also the same. As Maze walks off, he tells Aster that he will be waiting for him to enroll at the Night Academy. Aster watches in confusion because he can't even say if the dude is an ally or not because he is too elusive. Hifrid then pats Aster on the shoulder, suggesting that they head home because he would like to hear all about his big performance. Aster agrees and says his mother is going to freak out by the time she sees all of his injuries. Meanwhile, Roderick gets a report that his son, Dallas, has lost his life in the trial imposed by Zenos. Since Aster was scheduled to take one too, Roderick asks the messenger what transpired. The dude then informs Roderick about the existence of the Seven Wings, but Roderick is not entirely surprised. Basically, they have been maintaining a power balance in the house for so long, but at this point he believes that it might finally collapse. The dude suggests that they take some kind of action, but Roderick tells him not to do anything because it is not a threat yet. In addition, he doesn't think there is any reason to rush since the Seven Wings will be his eventually. However, until then, he is going to let Aster play freely with it because he wants to enjoy watching how Aster, who escaped him 10 years ago, struggles for a while. 4 years later, Aster heads to the Night Academy, and the official calls the applicants to gather. While everyone is filling out the forms, they notice Aster walk past, and their attention immediately shifts to him since he has gotten somewhat popular. Aster walks to the desk to register his name, and the official tells him that he would have to present his wing crest because they can't let anyone who doesn't have magic through, since they don't want anyone faking it. Suddenly, the official reads Aster's name, and he is shocked at his last name, which is Elmheim. Aster then smiles at him, asking if he still has to show his crest because his crest is actually in a place where it is somewhat hard to reach. With a smirk on his face, he asks the official if his face is enough to get him in. Later on, Aster is minding his own business when a blonde-haired troublemaker, Smites, starts calling him. He tells Aster that he has never seen him among the applicants before, while asking Aster if he hasn't come to the wrong place. Smites tells Aster that the exam is for the elite of the elites, and Aster just walks past him, telling him that there is no problem if that is the case. Smites yells at Aster, telling him that everyone in the hall has gone through rigorous training and has come back to take the exam repeatedly. He mocks Aster, telling him that he is going around dangling a kid-sized sword, ultimately dreaming of an elite path. Smites continues by telling Aster that the exam is not for people like Aster, and he casually tells him to get lost if he is only there to sightsee. Meanwhile, the other applicants are not surprised by this because this is how Smites treats newcomers every year. In addition, they can't believe that he is seriously messing with Aster of the Seven Wings. Smites is totally oblivious to who Aster is, and just then, Grian and his lackeys show up on the scene. Grian greets Aster, his cousin, telling him that it's been a while. Aster offers his condolences about Dallas, but Grian tells Aster that he doesn't need to worry about Dallas because he is a disgrace who needed to die. In fact, he feels refreshed and glad that Dallas is gone because he was always acting high and mighty because he was a year older. Grian then tells Aster not to underestimate those of them in the main family, even though he has the Seven Wings to boast about, because there is no one in the academy to protect him. After saying this, Grian and his gang walk off, but the candidates are only impressed that there are 2 members of the Elmheim family present, which means it is a good year. It is at this point that Smites realizes that he's screwed, and he quickly walks up to Aster, acting all nice. Aster returns the gesture as he smiles at Smites, telling him that he can call him by his name. Not long after this, they report to the first exam venue, and the official taking charge of the exam welcomes all of them. He lets them know that the royal knights are different from the local knights who run rampant in the countryside. He continues by saying they protect the king and they are honored swords who risk their lives for the king, which means they have no need for useless people. He tells them to consider the day's exam as a battlefield, and they are expected to show their true worth to their heart's content. Deep down, Aster can't believe the nonsense that the dude is saying, but he doesn't really care because he's finally made it back to the academy again. Back when he was wingless, he wasn't even given the opportunity to stand right where he was. Basically, beyond that point is a world of the strong that he was never able to reach, and the man who stays at the top is Roderick. Aster urges Roderick to wait for him because he is going to catch up to him in no time. However, to do this first, he has to break through the selection exam, and just then, the official declares the exam open. Suddenly, one of the applicants is sent to the ground with an arrow piercing his head. This immediately tells the applicants that the exam is not a joke, and the officials reveal that the exam is called the Trial of the Turret. He lets them know that those who stand at the end will be the winners. In no time, a barrage of arrows starts raining down on the applicants standing in the hall. Some of the applicants panic and try to run, but the arrow still catches them. Other applicants, on the other hand, form a group to protect themselves, and these are former applicants who are already used to the system. However, even with this, the survival rate is still about 30%, and he believes that their method to form a circle will soon reach its limit. Basically, what they are hoping to see is the overwhelming power that only someone with a wing crest can achieve. Suddenly, some of the applicants notice that Aster is not moving, and they believe that he is an idiot who must have frozen up in fear. Grian also thinks it is the end of the line for Aster, but the moment some arrows come flying at him, Aster easily repels all of them. The applicants are left in shock when they see Aster create a whirlwind with his magic power just to repel the arrows. Aster keeps this up, leaving the other applicants to start asking what kind of monster he is because not a single arrow is reaching him. Even the official is impressed because Aster is basically manipulating his mana to make it seem like he is in a storm. Soon afterward, the rain of arrows stops, and the official is surprised that more people actually survived than he expected. The official commends the survivors, telling them that they have passed the first trial, unlike the corpses lying all around them. However, he lets them know that there is no time to rest because he is going to guide them to the next trial grounds. Smite sighs in frustration, talking about how the official is sent straight from hell. Aster is surprised that Smites is already exhausted from the mere arrows that were thrown at them. Smites, on the other hand, cannot believe that Aster is acting totally unfazed, as if nothing happened. Even the official is impressed that there is no sign of tiredness in Aster, even though he just used a whole lot of mana, and this just proves the power of the Seven Wings, but he is curious to see how Aster is going to fare in the next trial. Grian, on the other hand, is pissed that his cousin survived, and he remembers getting an order from a certain someone who told him to make sure he does everything in his power to prevent Aster from becoming a royal knight for the future of Elmheim. Upon arriving at the next trial grounds, the official tells them that they will exchange their swords for identical swords to ensure fairness. Smites is confused about the whole thing, and Aster asks him if it was different before, and Smite says they have never worried about their swords. Smite suggests that they might be cautious because of Aster's weird sword. Just then, Grian shows up, teasing Aster. telling him that it appears that he has found a lackey for himself, which is Smites. Smites is pissed when he hears this, but Grion quickly intimidates him by whispering in his ears, telling him that he is going to learn a painful lesson if he wags his tail at the wrong person. Smites shakes up in fear, and he tries to get Grion to take back what he said, but Grion ignores him. Smites even goes as far as telling Grion that he has nothing to do with Aster. Aster looks around and realizes that he is in a hostile environment. Just then, the official shows up to explain the rules to them. He tells them that the second trial is a siege battle, and they will be divided into 3 teams to battle for control over each other's camps within the forest. He mentions that a camp is considered to be occupied when one's team flag is raised on its flagpole. He explains that the team occupying 2 or more camps by the time the evening bell rings will be the victor. However, any action that renders the flag unusable, such as destroying or confiscating them, is prohibited. Aside from this, there are no other prohibited actions, and they are free to use the swords given to them because they can even kill their enemies with them. After saying the rules, the officials tell them that it is time to announce the team members who will be participating in the trials with them. Soon afterward, the smoke signal goes up in the air, and this is a signal that the trial has begun. Basically, there are 3 flags per team, and they need to capture at least 2 camps, including their own. Smites tells Aster that this can only mean that out of the 3 teams, there will only be 1 winner. Aster confirms this and asks Smites if there is anything he is worried about, and other team members point out that this means they would have to fight Elmheim. Aster immediately realizes that things are about to go south. Smites mentions that they are terrified of Elmheim's retaliation because their opponent is Grion, the young master of the main Elmheim family. Smites tells Aster to imagine a scenario where they point a sword at Grion during the trial. Smites fears that the blowback might be bad and can even cause their entire families to be wiped out. Smites lets Aster know that they are all scared of making an enemy of Elmheim. Smites ends it by telling Aster that there is always a next trial, so it is better they wait till then instead of throwing their lives away. In the end, Aster is left to compete alone in a team battle. Nonetheless, he understands the fear of Smites and the others because Elmheim is truly terrifying. They are basically a family of tyrants that cannot be defied. In the trials, Grion is the symbol of that fear. Even though his team members believe that he wouldn't understand this, he is just like them from an outsider's point of view. As he continues toward the nearest flag, he notices that everywhere is quiet, leaving him to wonder if no one has engaged each other in combat yet. It is either that they are being cautious, or there's another game at play. Just then, he finds the dude with the yellow flag, and the dude expresses his surprise that Aster actually came just like the person of interest predicted. Aster wonders what the dude is saying, and in addition, he notices that he has taken down his own camp's flag. The dude then throws his yellow flag in the air, and just then, the red flag, which is the symbol of Grion's team, appears in the distance. Suddenly, it dawns on Aster that the red flag team and the yellow flag team are working together to take him down, with Grion leading the charge. A fight soon ensues between Aster and the leader of the yellow-flagged team, which forces him to ask the dude why he is supporting Grion when there can only be one winner at the end of the tournament. The dude casually replies that he and Elmheim had formed an alliance, which is why he is free to help them. It turns out that the leader of the yellow-flagged team, who is currently going up against Aster, is no small fry because he is the heir of the Nolan house, Christopher Nolan. This is a house that is known for its swordsmanship, and he was basically overshadowed by 7 wings in the first exam, which is why they didn't hear much about him. However, there were only 2 people who got through the trial pretty easily, and these 2 were Aster and Christopher, who is a 5-wing swordsman. While the 2 are battling it out in the distance, the instructor is watching to witness a great battle go down, but he obviously knows that only one of them can pass, even though they are both extraordinary. Aster berates Christopher for his decision to form an alliance with Grion when he knows that this basically puts him on the losing side. Christopher proudly tells Aster that he doesn't really care as long as the main house wins, which is why his teammates are currently on their way to attack his base. Aster hears this and he becomes worried about his teammates since this only means that they are now in danger. Aster then asks Christopher if Grion threatened his teammates to get them to let down their guard, but Christopher lets him know that everyone knows who the big shot is, and they are not ready to go against his wishes. As the 2 continue to cross swords, Christopher tells Aster that knight nobles live in a strict hierarchy, and this is just how they are supposed to carry themselves. Suddenly, Aster notices a crack in his sword after blocking Christopher's attack, and he immediately figures out that there is something strange about the sword, which means the examiner must have intentionally given him a piece of junk. Christopher then tells him something surprising, letting him know that their fight is just a one-on-one battle because he doesn't give a shit about the Elmheim family, and Aster is just part of the family. Suddenly, Christopher pierces through Aster's sword, cutting off the pointed edge. However, instead of letting this go to waste, Aster catches it and hurls it at Christopher, forcing him to parry the throw. With Christopher distracted, Aster turns tail and runs into the woods. Christopher yells at him to stop running and come fight him. but Aster lets him know that there is someone he needs to deal with first. Christopher chuckles, believing that Aster is scared of him. But just then, he notices something strange with the broken sword that Aster threw at him, and this is the fact that it is a cheap sword. Since he is an upright knight, he gets pissed at the fact that Elmheim is playing dirty tricks. Moments later, Aster arrives at his camp, calling on Smites to ask him if he is fine. Grion's voice echoes from the top of the wall where he is proudly sitting, talking trash about Aster, expressing his surprise that Christopher couldn't hold him for long. Grion then confidently tells Aster that he has no way forward because they have just claimed his base, and there are a ton of hands ready to stop him. He is busy chatting like a parrot when Aster yells at him, demanding to know what happened to Smites and the others. Suddenly, Aster feels the coldness of a sword pointed at his back, and to his surprise, it turns out to be Smites and the rest of his teammates. Smites urges Aster not to take it the wrong way because he already said from the start that he wouldn't want to get involved, since only brain-dead people will defy Elmheim. Grion laughs out loud, telling Aster that his teammates didn't even try to resist whatsoever. Aster then asks Grion if he thinks he's won because he has numbers on his side, but Grion tells him that he is wrong because he doesn't think he will win, since he has already won. He reminds Aster that the win condition for the battle is to hold at least 2 bases when the exam ends, and as things stand, even if Aster fights like crazy, while running around planting flags on every base, he doesn't have the manpower to guard them. He lets him know that all he has to do is wait until he heads off to another base, then go back to raise the red flag again. Grion says as long as they keep 2 or more bases, they have no issue whatsoever. Aster then reaches for his sword, telling Grion that he only has to make sure that they don't have the strength to do this, because he is going to cut down every last one of them if he has to. Smites and the others panic when they hear this, but Grion teases Aster, telling him that he is bluffing, since his sword is nothing but a piece of trash. Grion tells him that he might possess the 7 wings, but with a trash weapon, he is no better than a wingless knight. Hearing everything Grion has to say, Aster finally pulls out his sword, commending him for being a step ahead of him. Aster admits that Grion has thought everything through over and over, and the moment Grion hears Aster admitting this, he starts celebrating his win. Suddenly, Aster drops his sword and makes a quick move that even Smites couldn't read. Before Smites knows what is happening, Aster drops down, delivering a powerful kick that sends him flying into the distance. Smites' sword drops from his hand, and Aster uses the opportunity to arm himself with the sword. With a single strike, he delivers a powerful shockwave that takes out everyone who had surrounded him. Aster then turns to Grion, telling him that his only mistake was showing off in front of him. Aster confidently tells him that he is about to lose because he had the effrontery to stick out his neck. Grion panics when he sees this, and before he can run, Aster leaps into the air as if he has literal wings. He lunges toward Grion, and Grion tries to block the incoming attack, but his sword is ultimately cut in half. With Grion on his knees, Aster remembers the first time he managed to fly and the sense of relief that comes with controlling magic. Aster grabs Grion by the collar as if he is ready to kill him, while telling him that having a wing crest doesn't guarantee anything. Aster delivers a powerful output from his sword that leaves an insane explosion, which shocks Smites and the others who are just waking up. By the time the smoke clears, they see Aster dragging Grion over like a piece of trash that he is. Aster drops him on the floor, and even though he just got beaten up by Aster, Grion still tries to manipulate his counterparts, telling them to kill Aster instead of just sitting around. When he notices that they are not making a move, he invokes the Elmheim name, telling them that he is basically giving them an order. The moment they hear this, Smites and the others rush to pick up their weapons, and Aster expresses his disappointment, asking Smites if House Elmheim is so terrifying that he has to act this way. Smites replies, telling Aster that it is as terrifying as it sounds because his family is just third-rate nobles who could be wiped out in the blink of an eye. Smites lets him know that they are dead if this is what Elmheim wants because they are nothing but ants. Smites lets Aster know that they are nothing but obedient dogs who will do anything just to survive in such a crazy world because they have people above them. Smites yells at Aster, telling him that he can't know how they feel because he already has everything. Aster hears this and chuckles, forcing Smites to scream at him, asking him why he is laughing. Aster then lets him know that his sister said the same thing about him, not understanding what it is like for those who don't have anything. However, Aster lets Smites know that he has his own stand against this, saying it is true that he is currently in a blessed position, which is exactly what gives him the leverage to do certain things. He ultimately points his sword at Smites' neck, telling everyone who is present that Elmheim is also his enemy, and if they are not going to do anything, he might as well just do it on his own. Aster confidently reveals his intention to crush Elmheim, and this shocks everyone, including Grion. Smites asks Aster if he understands the gravity of what he is saying, and Aster assures him that he is quite aware because he is basically declaring war. Aster lets Smites and the others know that no matter how much they serve the Elmheim family, it will only end in betrayal and a miserable death. Aster tells them that if they don't like this outcome, their only choice is to fight. He tells the group that the 7 wings on his back give him the power to do just that, and he tells them to choose between him and the Elmheim family. Grion yells at Aster, telling him not to delude himself because they are not going to allow something like this to happen. Grion threatens the group, telling them that he is going to remember their faces and names, so they should expect repercussions if they betray the family. Smites hears this, and fear creeps through his body, but he still decides to make the right decision. He drops his sword and walks to where the flag is, while telling Aster that he has to follow through on his promise to deal with the Elmheim family. Smites lets him know that if he gets their hopes up and later does nothing, he will never forgive him for it. Seeing how desperate Smites is, Aster promises him that he won't let them down. Just then, Smites shocks everyone by raising the blue flag, while pledging his allegiance to Aster, shocking everyone because they never expected him to say it quite brazenly. However, this only means that Grion's plan has been shot to pieces, and even Grion himself knows this. Smites then asks the others why they are hesitant when they have been given a chance to take down the family that has been making their lives difficult. He urges them to put their faith in Aster, the bearer of the 7 wings. And seeing how dedicated Smites is, Aster realizes that he has managed to convince one, which means he doesn't have to run around anymore raising flags himself. However, he knows that this is still not enough because to take down Elmheim, he needs a bulk load of allies. One of the bunch walks over to Grion to check on him, but Grion slaps his hand away, calling him a useless trash. Deep down, Grion is raging at the fact that Aster even has the boldness to declare war on them. Grion knows that he is done for if he allows Aster to get away with whatever, and while he is thinking about his move, Christopher shows up on the scene. The moment Grion sees him, he believes that everything is already sorted out, and he yells at Christopher, reminding him that Aster is his opponent to deal with. Grion is thanking his stars that he still has Christopher to help him out, because even though he has only 5 wings, he is still the strongest person present on the scene when it comes to swordsmanship. Grion is screaming at Christopher to take Aster down when Christopher throws his red flag on him, telling him that he is there to return the flag because his method of doing things doesn't sit well with his idea of knighthood, which is why he is calling off their alliance. Grion and his subordinates hear this and freak out because House Nolan is the last one they expect to turn on them. Christopher then calls Aster out, telling him that there is no way the exam ends without them having a bout. Christopher tells him that he wants to see if his house's swordsmanship is superior or if his 7 wings are the pinnacle of power. Christopher dashes toward Aster, but Aster easily blocks his attack, telling him that he would have to wait to find out. Seeing the aura emanating from Aster's body, Christopher realizes that he is nothing like what he fought previously. By the time Christopher knows what is happening, Aster has already pinned his sword to the ground. Christopher then asks him what he means by not yet, since there will be only one winner at the end of the exam if their aim is to become royal knights. Christopher leaps backward, ready to take another leap at Aster, while telling him that they have to decide what will happen right there and then. Aster then tells him that this is where the problem is because he wants to become a royal knight and he wants the same for Christopher too. Christopher is shocked when he hears this, and Aster mentions that he can't just go around trying to rile everyone up to try and crush Elmheim while taking their dreams away from them because this would be lame. Aster then tells them that he has a plan to get everyone to pass, and hearing this from Aster, they are all left dumbfounded. Aster lets them know that he can't promise if it will work, but he needs everyone's cooperation for it. Aster then walks up to Grion, offering him his hand while suggesting that they make up. By the end of the exam, the instructor shows up and he looks visibly pissed when he sees the 3 flags stacked on top of each other. He asks them if none of them knows how to raise a flag, and Aster reminds the dude that the condition for victory is controlling 2 or more bases, but they never said only one team could raise a flag in each base. Since there is no rule speaking against this, he lets the dude know that the 3 teams basically formed an alliance to occupy every single base. The instructor walks up to Aster, asking him if he is trying to mock the exam because he doesn't know how he expects everyone to pass. Seeing how pissed the instructor is, Smites and Grion express their worries because they already showed doubts that Aster's plan would work. The instructor asks Aster if he would shake hands with the enemies if he were asked to invade an enemy stronghold, and Aster lets him know that if the enemy is worth more alive than dead, he would prefer to have them on his side. The instructor crashes out, telling him that knights are the sword of the kingdom and he has no right to make this decision. Aster then throws the huge question at him, asking him if he is willing to fail them because, as it stands, they have not broken any rule whatsoever, which means he will just be acting on his own personal bias. The instructor is taken aback when he hears this, and Aster further moves over to whisper to him, telling him that if he flunks everyone, he should expect retaliation from the nobles. The instructor is completely left speechless when Aster throws this at him. The examiner then leaves to ask for guidance from the higher-ups, while Smites and the others wait to know what their fates will be. Smites expresses his shock that Grian even agreed to the plan, and Smites asks him what he said to Grian. Aster replies with a sinister smile that it was nothing special, but before he can reveal what he said, the instructor returned with the headmaster, Mimir, and he called everyone's attention because the exam results were about to be announced. With the old man Mimir stepping into the room, the atmosphere changes, but the candidates are not entirely impressed because he just looks like some random old man. Aster berates Smites, telling him to at least have some respect for the old man. Mimir then approaches Aster, telling him that it is thanks to him that they had to make some very difficult decisions because admitting this number of candidates has never happened before. He mentions that there was even talk of holding a retest, but with support from the other board members, they have decided to accept Aster's proposal. Aster asks him what this means, and the old man reluctantly reveals that this means they have all passed the exam. The candidates jump up for joy except for the big shots, and Mimir urges everyone to work hard to prove that their decision wasn't a mistake. Mimir claps for the newly accepted candidates, welcoming them to Dorasil Royal Knight Academy. After settling into the academy, Aster and his peers soak themselves in the pool to cool off. Smites talks about how nice the environment is, and he mentions that the food is delicious, while attributing all the praise to Aster. Others join him in expressing their surprise at the fact that they managed to pass, while assuring Aster that they are going to follow him for life. Christopher scolds them when he hears this, reminding them that they were all just cheering for Grian not so long ago. Christopher then tells Aster that, unlike the others, he owes him nothing, but Smites throws a jab at him, telling him that he is just a loud-mouthed dude even though he lost to Aster. Christopher disagrees, saying he didn't lose, but only agreed to a draw. Aster then tells the group not to think too much about it because the most important part is that they went up against Grian and still managed to become cadets. He lets them know that little wins like this will become the big win that they will eventually need to topple Elmheim. Aster confidently declares that this moment is exactly when their rebellion begins. Aster then remembers his older sister Alphen, who is still at the academy, and he expects her to be an ally since she already knows the ins and outs of the academy. Aster gets out of the pool, thinking of putting his plan into motion the next day. Suddenly, he notices the others groveling at his feet, and he turns around in shock, asking them what they are doing. Smites and the others boldly tell him that a real-life Seven Wings is good luck, and they have decided to pray to him to at least get some blessings from him. Aster has never heard this level of bullshit in his life, and he yells at them, telling them that it doesn't work that way. All the while, Christopher is just sitting in the distance, sighing in frustration because he knows that they are in for a long ride. Later on, Grian finds himself begging for forgiveness in his mother Helen's room. Helen is pissed that Grian messed up and even gave Aster the confidence to say he is going to crush them. Grian can see how pissed his mother is, and he screams, begging for forgiveness, assuring her that he is going to make up for his failure. He is in the middle of this when he is suddenly kicked in the mouth, sending him across the room like a piece of trash. The one who had the audacity to kick him like trash is none other than his cousin Lily, who tells him that it is better he is chopped up and fed to beasts like Dallas. Grian hears this and begs for his life, telling his sister that they can do everything to him except that. Before he can even finish his statement, he starts receiving another round of trashing from Lily. As the blows land, Grian groans in pain while blaming everything that happened on Aster. While trying to convince Grian, Aster had urged him to cooperate because if he returned home empty-handed, he would be a dead man. He lets him know that he can't fail the exam and peacefully return to the house because they would chop off his head. After hearing how his brother died and how miserable it was, Grian realizes that he isn't ready to go out like Dallas. Aster had told him that all he had to do was look the other way and let him do whatever he wanted to do, while promising that he would help him afterwards. Before Lily can beat Grian to death, another figure appears in the room, urging her to take a chill pill because Grian is already apologizing for what he did. This person turns out to be another brother, Julius, and he looks absolutely worse with an evil aura around him. To make it worse, he even has Alphen under his thumb, and she can't even do anything since she has a weird mask over her face. Helen then tells Julius and Lily to show everyone why they are on top, because the appearance of the Seven Wings is starting to shake off the influence they have over the Knights. She ominously tells them to show everyone that violence reigns supreme in this world and not some petty decorations. Soon afterward, Aster and his new freshmen are taken to the training ground to try their best against training dummies. They are given tough dummies to beat just to get the best out of them, and this is why the Academy has divided candidates into 6 tiers of grades, just to assign each grade a curriculum that is suited to their level. The candidates are urged to put their all into it, assuring them that the stronger they are, the more advanced techniques they will have access to. They are informed that if the only thing they know how to do is swing a sword, then they are nothing but third-rate, but being able to handle magic promotes them to second-rate. During the training, Grian finds himself struggling against the dummy, while Christopher is basically trashing the dummies. However, to become first-rate, one must have mastered both sword and magic. The instructor tells them to try their best to get to third rate because he has nothing to teach failures who can't even make it to third rate. The instructor gives Optimus Prime-level motivation to the candidates, telling them that proving their strength is the only freedom they are allowed, and instead of the motivation pushing the others, Aster's aura ends up taking over the show. Aster's aura is so massive that it brings the entire training area to a halt as they turn around to see that he has cut the tough training dummy in two. Since Aster is able to cut down the training dummy, the instructor decides to use this as a benchmark for the others, but they yell at him, telling him that this much doesn't even appear to be possible. Aster, on the other hand, looks up to see that he is being watched by the headmaster, who appears to be extremely blown away by his strength. The headmaster, however, tells his colleague that what he is currently looking at is not the true strength of the 7 wings because if Aster ever starts to feel satisfied with himself as he will be devoured by the real dragon lurking in the academy, and this is none other than Julius. After the training session, the cadets are assigned their specific grades, and it appears that Aster and Christopher are the only special ones because they were assigned to the 4th grade, while the others were assigned to the 6th grade. Even though Smites is currently at grade 6, Aster urges him to catch up because he cannot become a royal knight unless he is at least grade 2. Smites casually agrees to do his best while calling Aster his boss, saying he sets the bar very high. Aster wonders why he is calling him a boss, and Smites quickly reminds him that he was the one who promised that they were going to topple Elmheim. Smites tells him that because of his words, almost the entire group has decided to follow the rebellious route because they believe that he has what it takes to change things. Smites hugs Aster while teasing him, telling him that it is time to put him on the throne to knock down Elmheim. Aster then tells Smites that to make this possible, he also needs to get stronger. Deep down, Aster is glad that everyone is on board to take down Elmheim, but this only means he also cannot stay in one spot, so he has to be really strong. Just then, Smites tells Aster that they need to eat first because food is obviously the most important thing. Surprisingly, they arrive at the cafeteria to find people standing around as if the room is full. The moment they spot Aster coming in, the group freaks out because they know trouble is about to erupt. Aster finally steps forward to see what is happening, and he is surprised to find the 2 annoying siblings, Julius and Lily, having the time of their lives. Aster recognizes Julius the moment he sees him because he is 3rd in line for the succession, and he is the 2nd son of the main house. Basically, he and his sister are the most notorious and vicious psychopaths of the house. Lily commends Aster's handsomeness while stepping on Grian's head, saying they are nothing alike. It turns out that the situation has gotten progressively worse for Grian, who now has the weird mask on his face too. Grian tries to speak, but the mask hinders his speech, and this is where Smite starts to get creeped out, asking Aster what the mask is. Aster then tells him that what he is looking at is called the Iron Shackle, which is a punishment device Elmheim uses to correct failures. Julius is surprised that Aster knows what the device is, even though he was raised in the branch house. Julius further stomps on Grian as if he is nothing, saying Grian carries the family name, but he couldn't even do better and only found himself in the 6th grade, which is quite pathetic. Julius raises Grian's head, saying he wants him to work even harder, which is why he put the iron shackle on him. Basically, he has a bunch of other cadets wearing the masks, and the idea is to make water, food, and even fresh air a reward. Julius mentions that whoever wears the mask has no choice but to work hard because the inability to get food and air means death. Seeing the weird number of people wearing the mask like a horde of zombies, Smites turns to Aster, asking him what is actually going on. Julius then casually teases them, urging them to show some respect because the zombie horde they are looking at is their upperclassmen. Just then, he calls someone important out, telling them to show their face. Aster almost loses his balance when he sees his sister emerge from among those who have the mask on, and a wave of rage takes over him. He screams out his sister's name, but instead of acknowledging him, his sister looks the other way as if she doesn't know him. Aster loses himself, and he grabs his sword as he prepares to take on Julius for touching his family. Julius maintains his calm aura as he throws Aster one of the masks, telling him that he has already prepared one for him too. Julius brings out a ton of masks, and he tells his zombie horde to grab the freshmen and slap a mask on each of them. The horde does as told, and they go after the freshmen, resulting in a brawl that has the new cadets fighting for their lives. While some are struggling, Christopher is basically engaging them with his usual one hand behind his back pose. Smites is basically freaking out because he never expected that they would fight Elmheim this early, even though he knows that at some point they would come at them. Trying to keep his cool, Smites screams at Aster, asking him for pointers on what should be done because at this rate, they're all going to end up as part of the mask squad. Not so surprisingly, Aster has already beaten down everyone who came after him, and even Smites trembles when he sees the overwhelming aura emanating from his body. With a calm, cold voice, Aster asks Julius what he thinks he is doing. Julius replies urging Aster to calm down because he is just doing him a favor by helping him get rid of the bunch of nobodies with no real skill, who only managed to pass the exam by clinging to him. Julius talks down on them, saying they are all behaving like real cadets. Julius claims that they have to be weeded out because if those at the bottom turn out to be trash, people tend to start looking at those at the top like trash too. Julius then says he is not ready to let any incompetent person make their way into the fold, which is why he is going to take the responsibility to whip them into shape. Julius proudly holds one of the masks to taunt Aster, and Aster lets him know that he never agreed to whatever it is that he is doing. Aster walks toward Julius, and he lunges toward him in anger with aura pouring out of his sword in an insane manner while he tells Julius to take the mask off his sister. Just as he is about to land a hit on Julius, Alphen surprisingly comes in to block the attack. Aster is confused when this happens, and he asks his sister what the hell she is doing, stopping him from taking on Julius. It soon progresses into a full-blown fight, and Julius just sits behind, enjoying the show, while telling Aster that he is not to be blamed for his sister wanting to be there. Julius tells Aster that he is free to ask Alphen herself if he doesn't believe him. Aster stands there, trying to understand what is happening because they have been worried that they haven't heard from Alphen in a while. Aster then decides to take the fight a bit seriously as he lunges toward his sister, telling her that he doesn't know what they have done to her, but he doesn't want her to obey them any longer. He tries the passive way, but Alphen aggressively pushes him back, leaving him completely shocked. Aster stands there, trying to understand what is happening, and Christopher scolds Aster for losing himself in the middle of a fight. Christopher then decides to take on Julius himself, since Aster is out of the question. Christopher charges at Julius, but to his surprise, Julius easily grabs his sword to hold him in place. Christopher tries to move, but his body just will not, and before he knows it, he sees himself getting overwhelmed by a strange magic. Suddenly, his right arm is engulfed in fire, causing him extreme pain, while Julius just throws him like he doesn't matter. Christopher hits the ground hard, and Smites rushes over to check on him. Smites panics when he realizes just how brutal the burn is, and he is in the middle of this when Lily descends on them. She smiles evilly at them, saying she would like to have Christopher as her pet, but would discard Smites since he is weak. Julius makes fun of Aster, telling him that he also used his strength to gather followers, but in the end, they were absorbed by someone stronger. Aster stands there in the middle of the chaos as his colleagues are being overwhelmed, and Julius asks him which side he wants to belong to. Aster replies to his question by going after him, but his strike doesn't even do anything to him, and Julius grabs him by the throat. Julius uses the same fire magic he used on Christopher on Aster, trying to burn his essence away while talking down on him, asking him if this is all the 7 wings amount to. Julius expresses his disappointment because he thought Aster would be more useful than he currently is. While he is actively being burned, Aster suddenly speaks up, telling Julius that he is basically getting too confident for someone who has only managed to block one attack. Julius doesn't understand what is happening until his fire starts getting sucked in by Aster's aura. Julius cannot believe his eyes, and before he knows it, Aster completely takes control of the situation, unleashing a massive force that sends Julius into the distance. Julius crashes into a table as Aster talks down to him, while Lily stands in the distance, completely frozen in shock. The whole room goes silent because Aster had just done the unexpected, and Smites watches in surprise because Aster's promise is coming through. Suddenly, Julius gets back on his feet as if nothing had happened while taunting Aster, telling him that he could have scratched his wing crest with the way he launched him away. Smites almost pisses his pants when he realizes that there is no single scratch on Julius. Lily, on the other hand, teases her brother, telling him that he just got spanked after boasting so much. In his defense, he tells his sister that it is normal for guys as strong as him to get hurt sometimes. Julius's mood suddenly changes from calm to erratic as he picks up his sword. A wave of fiery aura takes over his body, while asking Aster if he seriously called him trash some moments ago. Julius asks Aster if he thinks he is a big shot because of what he did, and with his aura going crazy, Julius asks Aster if he is prepared to die. However, Aster basically stands his ground, telling Julius to stop yapping and just come after him already. The two are about to go all out against each other when Maze enters the room, telling them to stop whatever it is they are doing because they have trashed the cafeteria already. Maze then tells Julius that he is a board member and he has no choice but to step in because he can't be allowed to just run wild the way he is every time. Julius turns his anger to Maze, telling him to back down because he is not invited to the party. Maze then teases Julius, telling him not to go all out against someone who is beneath him, since this doesn't speak well of him. Maze then walks up to Julius, urging him to put his sword away, and surprisingly, Julius listens to him. Julius tells him that he will do what he says in the meantime, and with this, Julius calls off his minions, telling them that they are done. As he is about to leave, Aster challenges him, screaming at him that he is not done talking to him yet, but before he can act irrationally, Maze grabs him, urging him to let it go this one time. Aster has no choice but to stand back as he watches his sister leave with Julius. He calls on his sister, and she just turns around to give him the side-eye before leaving. Later on, Aster and his peers hold a meeting about their losses. Smites asks Aster what could be done, and Aster turns to Maze, telling him that he should have stopped Julius earlier. Maze's assistant yells at Aster for making a demand of the Count, but Maze urges his assistant to chill out, telling her that this is just how Aster is. Maze smiles, saying they actually go way back together, and Aster actually remembers that Maze was at the main house when he was summoned 4 years ago. Basically, he was the only one who even sided with him, but even with this, Aster still can't say if he is a friend or a foe. Smites then asks Maze if he is about to let what happened slide, even though it is Elmheim that they are talking about. Maze smiles, reminding Smites that he is also an Elmheim executive, and unless there is a serious issue somewhere, he doesn't complain about how the head of the house runs things. Aster then asks him if putting masks on people and managing them doesn't count as a big problem to him. Maze replies that the academy has always been a pure merit-based knight training school, and even though the method is crude and bad, as long as it leads to a cadet's growth, he has no objection to it. Maze mentions that it is worth noting that cadets under Julius's management managed to climb the grades quickly, which is why the headmaster has approved his methods. Upon hearing this, Aster realizes that they are basically telling him that there is no one they can rely on. Aster turns around to leave, and Maze tells him to ditch any attempt to try to take back his colleagues himself because the main house has eyes on his every move. Maze lets him know that crossing the main house might just get him expelled, but even with this, Aster is looking to go after his colleagues. Aster tells Maze that he is not fighting for justice, but he is pissed because the iron shackles rot people from the inside, basically stealing one's voice, freedom, and the like. He mentions that before they know it, the will to defy their master will be gone. He says the shackles are terrifying because it turns people into obedient and convenient tools. Maze expresses his surprise that Aster is explaining this as if he has seen it firsthand, and Aster replies that he has basically seen what becomes of people when it is already too late. Aster then tells Maze that there is no way he is letting this happen to his friends, and he assures Maze that he has no intention of getting expelled, which is why he plans to handle the situation peacefully if there is a way to. Maze then asks him if he has a plan, and Aster boldly brandishes the iron shackle in his hand, reminding Maze of how he fights. 3 days later, Aster's boys have thrown themselves into training, and Christopher has also gotten up from his recovery bed to involve himself in training, telling Smites that there is no time to waste. He claims that the burn was nothing but a scratch, and Smites doesn't even argue because he understands how stubborn he is. However, Smites doesn't think Christopher is the bone of contention because for some reason, Aster has changed drastically. In a surprising turn of events, Aster is also wearing one of the masks as he leads the line in training. 3 days earlier, he had gone to Julius to make a deal with him. Julius is surprised to see him back so soon, and Aster lets Julius know that he is there to take back his sister and classmates that he has with him. Aster then tells him that in exchange for this, he will allow him to put the iron shackle on him. Alphen panics when she hears this, and she starts wondering what her brother is trying to do. Aster lets Julius know that it is going to be a win for him because he is already under suspicion of treason, so slapping a collar on the rebel is the best thing that can happen to him. Lily expresses her shock at how bold Aster is to surrender himself and become Julius's pet. Julius goes over the deal, and he admits that Aster is a problem for them. He also knows that getting Aster under control will have his mother and the board completely thrilled. However, Julius lets him know that he doesn't look like one who likes to play nice or obey, so he wants to know what Aster's endgame is. Aster replies that there is nothing special, reminding him that he is the only one who has the key to the mask as long as he puts it on him. Aster points out the fact that Julius can even kill him if he wants to, and this forces him to tease rage-bait Julius, asking him if he is not confident enough to think he can break him. Julius angrily melts the bottle in his hand because Aster has successfully gotten under his nerves, and trying to act tough, Julius agrees to his deal. However, Julius decides to put a condition on the deal, telling Aster that if, after 10 days of wearing the mask, he doesn't break, he will let Alphen and his classmates go. Alphen hears this, and she fears for her brother's safety because she believes that it is impossible to achieve such a feat. Without hesitation, Aster accepts the deal, and because he knows how well the iron shackle works, he can see that his stubborn older sister has become so timid that she can't even stand up to Julius. Seeing how powerless his sister is, Aster is even more driven to break her free, no matter what it takes. Aster stood there and allowed Lily to put the mask on him without arguing, just so he could have his sister back. This is basically how Aster got himself one of the iron shackles. During the training session, those with the masks on are the first to get tired, but the instructor doesn't really seem to care and even screams at them to get on their feet. While pitying the rest of the group, Christopher doesn't have a shred of pity for Grion because he believes that it is nothing but karma. While the rest of the masked dudes are falling off easily, Aster is busy running around as if nothing happened. Smites asks Christopher if having the 7 wings gives one insane stamina too, and this gets Christopher thinking. He knows that one can only go about a week without water or food, and this is if the person sits down doing nothing. With the amount of training they are engaging in, Christopher believes that Aster should have hit his limit. Christopher then asks Smites if he has ever heard the rumor about the infant who supposedly crawled alone over a snow-covered mountain. Christopher tells Smites that if the story is true, this basically means Aster has a really impressive will to live. However, Christopher doesn't think the story is true. Later that night, the Horde has their masks released so that they can eat, and this is nothing but a slice of cheese with water. Grion and the others fear for their lives, believing that they are going to die if this continues. Grion begs his sister to at least give him something better to eat, but this only angers him, and she proceeds to smash the small cheese that was given to him. Lily tells the group that they are not even supposed to be begging for food since there is someone even suffering more than they are in the room, and with this, she is referring to Aster. Julius sits down like a rotten king, munching on meat while taunting Alphine, asking her if she is not going to cheer her brother up. Seeing how silent Alphine is, Julius mocks her, asking her if she can look her brother in the eyes because he ended up that way because of her. Deep down, Alphine's heart is bleeding, wondering what she is supposed to do. At the same time, Julius is worried because he initially thought Aster had a hidden plan to get out of the current mess, but with what he has seen so far, he has no intention of resisting. He wonders if Aster is seriously trying to endure the full 10 days without resisting. And even though this looks weird, Julius doesn't mind because it makes things better for him. Julius is excited to see how long Aster's pride can take him, and he plans to enjoy the show while it lasts. In one of the training sessions, the instructor tells the cadets that magic has the flexibility to change roles depending on their will. He mentions that at times it becomes legs that let them run faster than any horse, and it might even become eyes that sense an enemy before anyone else. In fact, it might even become a trump card that changes the tide of battle. Aster showcases this during a combat session by easily vanishing using wind magic before descending upon his opponents, taking them out in an instant. The instructor tells them that in the Grade 4 curriculum, they're going to learn more advanced, specialized magic control. However, the use of swords during the said training is strictly forbidden because, as wing crest bearers, they already possess ways to kill without employing their swords. He shows an example of this by shooting aura out of his hand to ultimately kill a flying bird. By the 7th day, which has been a couple of days since the Grade 4 began, Aster realizes that he has gotten used to live combat magic training. At this point, he has just 3 days left until the deal day, and he believes that once he endures the pain, his sister and the others will be released. At the same time, it dawns on him that sitting around and waiting for something to happen is not the best way forward. He remembers that Julius had overwhelming power without touching a sword, and even with that, he can't tell what his limits are, since he hasn't seen them. One thing is clear to Aster, and this is the fact that Julius is in 1st grade, so he can't even afford to be stuck on the level he currently is. Aster manages to stand up from where he is sitting, even though he is exhausted. He's about to take a step when his vision blurs out and he crashes to the ground. His body temperature shoots through the roof thanks to the fever taking over his body. Out of nowhere, Christopher appears on the scene to check on him as if he had been stalking him. It turns out that Maze was the one who gave Christopher the task to monitor Aster because it would be disastrous if he died. He has given Christopher the order to help Aster in case anything happens, and even though he doesn't know what is going on in Maze's head, Christopher agrees to help. Christopher is about to get down to business to break the mask when Aster grabs his hand to stop him. Christopher is surprised that Aster is still trying to hold on in this situation, and he tries telling him that he is going to end up dead. But Aster lets him know that he can't give up because no one will save his sister, so he orders Christopher not to interfere. However, all of his rants can't be heard thanks to the mask covering his mouth. But Christopher can clearly see that he is not happy with his attempt to help. Christopher then tells Aster that there is no guarantee that Julius will honor his own side of the deal. Suddenly, Lily shows up with the rest of the zombie horde, taunting Aster, telling him to stop wandering around because he might be mistaken for an undead. Christopher challenges Lily, asking her why she has come to disturb their training session, reminding her that she is in Grade 2, so she has no business there. Lily then reveals that the zombie horde from Grade 4 said they want to show off for her, which is why she decided to show up. She lets Christopher know that the instructor didn't have an issue with this. Lily leaps into the top of a tree to mock Aster, telling him that she can't wait to see when he will start begging that he can no longer take it. Just then, she orders the zombie horde to go after Aster. Aster immediately figures out that Julius wants to take him out before the 10 days are up. Aster is surprised that Julius is willing to do this openly, and to make it worse, Christopher has been dragged into the mess. Aster and Christopher stand back to back while engaging the zombie horde coming for their heads. To make the situation even worse for them, they are under a restriction not to use their swords. As the battle continues, Aster realizes that he needs a trump card because they will lose in the end if they go for a battle of endurance. Aster knows that it is imperative that he comes up with one, or he can essentially consider the battle a lost cause. While watching the battle, Lily knows that Aster is probably raging that he can't use his sword, which is his strong suit. Since Aster was acting all tough in front of everyone, Lily is happy that he is currently getting humbled. They are basically looking to humiliate him because the more he refuses to give up, the more pathetic he will look. Suddenly, Aster hears Christopher yelling at him to get out of the way, and by the time he turns around, he sees a giant dude leaping toward him. Before he can react, he gets hit in the chest, sending him into a tree. Aster coughs up blood aggressively before passing out right on the spot. Christopher panics when he sees this, wondering if Aster is dead. But Lily orders the Horde not to kill Aster because she wants to keep him as a pet. She tells the giant that he is free to torture Aster all he wants, but make sure he stays alive. Just as one of the masked cadets is about to beat Aster, Aster suddenly locks in and his aura begins to flow. He blocks the dude's attack and delivers a counterattack that leaves Lily stunned. When everything becomes clear, they realize that Aster had cut the dude's arm with magic, which is completely surprising. They realize that Aster is operating on some sort of magic defense system, but it appears to be thin. Since it appears to be a bit weak, the giant decides to crush Aster before he gets the chance to increase his defense line. He rushes toward Aster, who had managed to get on his feet. Just as he is about to reach Aster, Aster blocks his attack with one hand while sending his slash attribute magic through the giant's body, immobilizing the dude. Lily freaks out when she sees this because Aster is just in 4th grade and shouldn't be able to use attribute shift. Attribute shift is not something simple like buffing weapons. It is basically a variant of magic control that adds a trait to one's power itself. The next set that tries to attack him suffers the same fate as the giant. Julius's magic burns everything he touches because he possesses fire attribute. But Lily can see that Aster's attribute is a slash attribute because magic cuts apart anything he touches. This is something that even some 2nd graders will never use their whole lives since it is supposed to be a high-level technique. Aster stands like a rock that cannot be touched as he runs through the Horde, cutting through them, and with this, Lily confirms that Aster now has the power to cut with magic alone. After taking down the entire Horde, Christopher realizes that Aster has gained another step ahead of him. Just then, Lily jumps down from where she is, saying Aster's cut might be flashy, but he hasn't killed anyone. She lets Aster know that this is not enough to stop her soldiers. Lily whips out her blade, ordering the Horde to get up on their feet and fight. Lily increases the intensity of her control, and just when they stand up to obey her, the masks suddenly break off their necks, shocking them. The Horde screams in celebration because they can finally talk and breathe. Christopher immediately figures out that Aster was cutting the masks during the heat of battle. Even with the Horde free from her control, Lily doesn't think this means anything, as she tells Aster that once they eat, they will politely put their masks on by themselves. Lily tells Aster that rescuing them is completely pointless because they all know where they stand. Lily then yells at the group, telling them to finish Aster off, but to her surprise, none of them makes a move to go after Aster. Christopher mocks Lily, telling her that this basically means they have not fallen so low as to bite because she commanded it. Christopher teases Lily, asking if she is willing to step up for herself. Lily groans in frustration when she hears this, and Christopher claims that he is basically helping Aster speak his mind since he can't speak. Lily uses the opportunity to speak on the fact that Aster now has the power to break free, but he won't because he is willing to wait until the last day, just because of the promise he made. As she walks away, Lily teases Aster, telling him that for someone who wants to take down Elmheim, he likes following the rules a little too much. She lets Aster know that it will eventually come to haunt him if he continues that way. Deep down, Aster knows that he is not doing anything dishonorable because he wants to be able to face his father when the time comes. Just then, the effect of him exhausting himself hits him hard, and just as he is about to crash to the ground, he feels a warm, familiar hand catch him. It turns out to be Alphen. Although she is the older sibling, she feels ashamed that Aster is always the one protecting her. However, she is finally ready to borrow some of Aster's courage, and she assures him that she will be fine. Soon afterward, Aster wakes up frantically to find himself alone in the room, wondering if the arms that caught him were just a hallucination. Just then he sees a letter beside him, and upon reading the letter he becomes even more erratic than before because it appears to be from his sister. Aster gets off the bed and rushes out of the room, only to run into Maze, who asks him where he is rushing off to because he is not in a shape to be moving around that way. Aster then shows him the note he found on the bed, which is basically his sister apologizing for being such a cowardly sister. In the letter, Alphen had told him that it is finally time for her to save him because he has been the one doing it all this time. Aster rushes because he plans to stop his sister before she does something that she will regret, which will render the shackles he put completely useless. Aster barges into Lily's room to find her standing over Alphen after beating her up. Lily welcomes Aster while talking trash about his sister, telling him that his sister has no manners. Aster rushes over to check on his sister, carrying her from the floor, urging her to stay alive. Lily boasts about how Alfin had come to beg to let her brother go because she believed that he was on the verge of dying. Lily says Alfin never had the courage to argue with them, but she suddenly showed up to make demands. Lily says this only made her angry, which is why she messed with Alfin a bit. She continues by boasting about how much she now feels better after she is done playing with Alfin. She even adds that she's going to sleep soundly that night, and while holding his sister, Aster realizes how naive he was. He realizes that he shouldn't have gone for the diplomatic route from the start because he should have just barged in and dragged his sister out. It dawns on him that if he had done that, his sister wouldn't have had to suffer what she just did. Aster remembers his father telling them that sometimes being diplomatic is the best choice a knight can make. He had told them that even if everything was going against them, they should never swing their sword in anger. Aster had asked him if what he was saying was that they should just sit there and take the insult, and their father replied that he was getting it wrong. He corrects the misconception, saying that what he is basically saying is that he should never lose sight of his purpose and timing. He tells him that he should never lose sight of why he picked up a sword, what he is fighting for, and the like. He told him to always have his answers ready because when the time comes to fight, he would be able to draw his sword without hesitation. Now remembering this teaching, Aster hates the fact that he acted too late. Suddenly, the aura in the room changes and Aster pulls a sword close, which catches Lily's attention. Aster's aura immediately goes wild, throwing the room into turmoil, but Julius remains calm while Lily is freaking out like a chicken. Aster's anger goes beyond control as his alter ego tells him to wipe out every single one of the Elmheims. Just as he's about to lose total control, Alfin subtly calms him down, but at that moment every person in the academy could feel the overwhelming presence of Aster's aura. Aster gently sets Alfin down and goes after Lily, aiming to cut her down, but Julius steps forward to block the attack. Julius commends Aster's strength because he hasn't even been eating for days and he still has that much power to throw around. Nonetheless, he asks Aster if he is sure about what he is about to do because he was basically enduring everything just to save his friends. Julius pushes Aster backwards, but he immediately makes a return because he is now determined to take Julius down with his own hands. Julius realizes that Aster is not ready to back down, and he suggests that they finish what they started before. With the two going crazy at each other, the other cadets in the room make a run for it so as not to get caught in the whole thing. Even Lily is freaking out because she wasn't expecting Aster to be in such a state and still be able to hold his own against Julius. Grion, who is also present in the room, is trembling because this is the first time he has seen Aster show this much power. The force from the two of them clashing results in Alfin getting sent across the room, and Julius is surprised that Aster didn't even bother to check on her. Unknown to Julius, everything ringing in Aster's head is for him to wipe out every drop of Elmheim blood. Just then, Aster places his hand on the ground, and Julius figures out that Aster is about to use the same magic as before to absorb Julius's magic, but he decides that he won't let this happen this time around. He leaps toward Aster, aiming to stop him. Seeing her brother rush headlong toward Aster, Lily tries to warn Julius, but it is already too late, and Julius gets caught in Aster's slash. Julius quickly reacts to this, and he shakes off the magic but loses his shirt to show his ripped body as a bonus point. Julius commends Aster, telling him that this is the first time he has gotten close to being killed by someone's magic. He then tells Aster that his power doesn't solely rely on heat because his magic actually burns hot enough to kill. The ground starts boiling, and Julius tells Aster that just by standing in the room, he is going to turn up the heat so much that he won't think of defying him. Julius's magic overwhelms the room, even affecting his zombie horde. But Aster doesn't seem worried as he tells Julius that he can only say he is the strongest if he is standing at the end of everything. The two go at each other again, and seeing how Aster is even tearing into his own body to get to Julius, it scares the hell out of Lily. Alfin finally manages to open her eyes, and seeing the way Aster is reacting, she realizes that there has only been one time Aster has ended up like this, and it was 7 years ago. It was so bad back then that their father had to risk his own body just to stop him, but after this, Aster started keeping his distance from his sisters. Their father had said it was the 7 wings running wild, but Alfin believes that it was just the fact that Aster couldn't forgive himself because he was too weak to protect his family. Just then, Julius gets the upper hand and he knocks Aster back, sending him crashing to the ground. Aster hits the ground and passes out, while Julius prepares to kill him. Suddenly, Julius feels something weird cutting into his body. Before he knows it, cut marks appear on his body with blood dripping out of his body, leaving him wondering when this happened. Julius is completely immobilized, and just then, Aster gets back on his feet with his mask shattering on the spot before proceeding to roar the Elmheim name. Julius panics as he didn't expect Aster to get back up, and before he knows it, Aster leaps toward him with a menacing look. Aster is on the verge of getting to Julius and killing him when Alfin jumps up to hold him back, begging him to stop. She begs Aster not to fight in a position that hurts only him. Aster hears his sister pleading with him, and this is when it dawns on him that he has gone too far. However, this still poses a problem because he can't hold his magic down, and if things continue this way, he will end up hurting his sister. He is thinking of what to do when Maze comes into the room, throwing his sword at him. Aster catches the sword, and with this, Aster is able to get his power under control. Alphen heaves a sigh of relief that her brother is fine, but Aster berates her, asking why she would do something reckless. Aster knows that things would have gone out of hand if his sword hadn't been there to absorb his magic. Julius finally has the guts to speak up, berating Maze for ruining the fun again. However, he lets Aster know that his hands might be currently immobile, but that won't stop him from killing him. Just then, Helen enters the room to give an order to arrest Aster, since he was the origin of the magic that they all just felt. Aster is immediately restrained and his sword taken away from him. Julius demands to know what is happening, and Helen mentions that during training, Aster had drawn his sword to cut down unarmed cadets, so there is no way the Academy is forgiving this. Alphen hears this and protests, saying her brother would never do such a thing, but Aster already knows that Lily was the one who went ahead to cook up the lie. Helen adds that what Aster just did shows that he has little control over his power. She mentions that Aster wields a power that he cannot control, which ultimately brings discomfort to his fellow cadets. Helen says they cannot allow such behavior to continue, even if Aster is from the Branch family or not. As Aster is being led away, Helen tells him that his fate will be decided the next day, but he should be prepared to leave the academy. Alphen fears for her brother when she hears this, and Maze also becomes worried because this was why he urged him to be cautious. Maze knows he can't help Aster as it stands because this will expose him, but at the same time he can't lose Aster. Just then, a wave of heat sweeps across the room, forcing those who arrested Aster to let him free. Helen turns to Julius, asking him what he is trying to do, and Julius tells her that he can't let the fight end the way she wants because everyone would basically mock him, saying he went crying to his mother since he couldn't beat Aster. Julius declares that Aster is a disgrace to the family, and because of this, he would be the one to kill him, so he tells Helen to back off. Helen tries to maintain her position by bringing up his brother, Patrick, but after seeing how crazy Julius is, she backs down. She tells Julius to do what he wants, but she lets him know that she wants results next time and not some cheap talk. As she leaves, she lets it be known that she can never accept the existence of the Seven Wings. Julius is about to leave when Aster calls him back, asking him about their deal. But Julius retorts, telling him that there is no longer a deal because, thanks to him, the iron shackles have now become nothing but cheap accessories, since he was able to break free from his own shackles. Julius then releases the others who are still under his control, telling them to do as they like from that moment forward. Julius compares them to rats that managed to escape their cages, and he can't be bothered to chase rats. However, since Aster won't be running, he tells him that he will settle things with him later, but urges him to make sure he already has the Seven Wings under control before then. With this, everything was settled, and some days later, Aster reunites with his fellow freshmen after he has recovered from his injuries. Just like before, they start calling him boss, but he urges them to stop it because he couldn't even do anything to help. Aster tells them that he almost messed up the chance to save their friends, but Smites tells him that he is wrong because everyone under Julius's control is back safe and sound, which is all thanks to what he did. Aster replies that he only just got lucky while revealing that his 7 wings didn't even amount to much. Aster is sulking on this when Smites smacks him on the back, telling him to stop beating himself up about the whole thing. Smites lets him know that everyone is aware that he charged into enemy territory for their sake, which basically had him risking his life. Smites reminds him that he is just 14 years old and there is no one among them who would look down on him. Aster is left speechless when he realizes that they are all solidly behind him. Smites then whispers in his ear, asking him what happened to his sister. Smites wants to know if he finally got to spend time with his sister, but surprisingly enough, he and Alphen have not even spoken since the incident. It is as if they are both avoiding each other because they feel some level of guilt between them. In a surprise turn of events, Alphen visits him that night, suggesting that they talk, and Aster couldn't be happier to see his sister come to him herself. The two step out to talk, and as they stroll through the academy, Alphen talks about how relieved she is that she is finally able to move the way she wants, while attributing the praise to Aster. She thanks Aster for saving her, and Aster nervously replies that he didn't go there only to save her. Alphen assures him that she is aware of this, but tells him that he doesn't have to beat himself up about it. She then confesses that a part of her actually wants Aster to leave her there because no girl would want their little brother to see them in such a pathetic state. She smiles, reminding Aster that this is the second time he has saved her. She then quotes Aster, saying those who cannot avenge themselves have no right to take up the sword. This was what Aster said at the sword dance festival, and Alphen admits that when she heard it, she was deeply frustrated because Aster was right. Because of this, Alphen decided that she would become stronger so she could at least beat her own enemies. However, she still failed at this, and she only realized this when she arrived at the academy. It was this time that she realized that she could never be like Aster because she lost to Lily and Julius. She admits that her last struggle was to try to look cool in front of her little brother, but she still managed to mess it up and cause trouble for him, making her a pathetic sister. Aster sees how much his sister is suffering, and he decides to pacify her, telling her that raw power isn't the only form of strength, while assuring her that he has never seen her as a pathetic person. He mentions the fact that Alphen is always the one who helps him find his way whenever he is about to go rogue, and this alone is a strength on its own. Aster talks about how his sister has saved him more times than he can count, and this leaves Alphen completely stunned. Aster continues, revealing that the whole incident is a wake-up call for him, and it shows him that he is still really immature. Aster had convinced himself that he could do everything on his own, but in reality, he still lacks the skill and manpower to take on House Elmheim. Aster then shocks his sister by urging her to support him in taking on House Elmheim because she is the most reliable ally he can ask for. Alphen is shocked by the offer, and Aster tells her that they will have a better chance of taking down the house with her support. Alphen is blown away by this, and she admits that her brother hasn't changed since they were kids. Alphen tells Aster that he doesn't act like a little brother, while adding the fact that she still doesn't have an idea why he made an enemy of House Elmheim. However, she admits that she can't overlook the misdeeds committed by family, even though she is also part of the family. Alphen then assures Aster that she will be by his side, since she is his big sister after all, and she has to keep an eye on him. The two shake hands on this, and Aster welcomes his sister back into the fold. After this, Aster introduces Alphen to the rest of the gang, and he lets them know that Alphen is a third-grade cadet, so they have to show her the respect that she deserves. He is in the middle of his introduction when Smites has already rushed over to kneel in front of Alphen. He touches her hand while introducing himself, talking about how gorgeous Alphen is. He is busy with his shenanigans when Aster's aura suddenly flares up, asking him when he gave him permission to touch his sister casually. Smites immediately realizes how overprotective Aster is, and he rushes away from his sister. The others see this and also come to the conclusion that Aster's sister is out of bounds. Alphen is surprised when she sees Grian among the ranks, and Grian claims that he is there because Aster helped free him from the iron shackle. Christopher cuts in, saying he is most likely there because Helen told him to keep an eye on the rebel elements. Aster assures Christopher that he doesn't really care about this because it is obvious that, as long as they remain in the academy, their every move is being monitored. He adds that the fact that Helen is even stressing herself to monitor them means that they don't plan to make a move right away. It is apparent that Helen is busy dealing with her rebellious son. Christopher then asks him what the plan is because they can't make a move since the opponent is staying back. He asks Aster if he plans to just sit around until they graduate, but Aster lets him know that this is not his plan because he is going to make his move pretty soon. Alphen then asks him how he plans to do this, since Helen is a director of the academy and she holds massive influence within House Elmheim. In fact, the instructors, the other directors, and the principal can't even say no to whatever she wants. Aster then mentions that all they need to do is gain more influence than Helen. The gang is surprised when they hear this, and Aster points out the fact that Helen is a woman of power who tramples on those beneath her, but the same thing doesn't apply to those above her. Basically, Aster wants them to get someone who is above Helen, so she stays away from them. Smites freaks out, telling Aster that it is easier said than done since Helen is the wife of a duke and part of the greatest knight family in the nation. He mentions that to get someone more powerful than her will mean that they are talking about the duke himself or the greatest power in the kingdom, and Aster confirms this. Aster tells Smites that the plan is to get the king of the Dorisil kingdom on their side since he holds power over them all. Meanwhile, Roderick is meeting with the king while he is having a luxurious bath. The king asks Roderick if there are any warriors worth looking out for at the duel rite that will soon take place. The king wants to know about Aster because he would like to see his power firsthand. Roderick tells the king that he will be sure to present Aster to him if it is what he wants, but he lets the king know that he is still young and immature. He adds that this means that they are not sure if he can live up to their expectations. The king then tells Roderick that whether Aster is worthy or not is not the issue, since he is the one who bears the crest that surpasses even Roderick himself. The king reveals that rumors are already flying around in the castle that Aster will eventually be the one to replace him as the strongest knight. The king admits that he has heard how unruly Aster is and how he doesn't care if he tramples on the main family. The king tells Roderick that he has heard a lot in recent times, and he admits that it's going to be a disaster if the Aster group staged a rebellion with the Seven Wings on their side. Because of this, the king tells Roderick to make sure he takes care of Aster before he is old enough to bite the hand that feeds him. The king admits that his position would be shaken if House Elmheim were to fail. Roderick then assures the king that he will make sure to put everything under control before it is too late, so he assures the king that he has nothing to worry. They are in the middle of this conversation when another member of the Elmheim family, Patrick, enters the room. He bows to the king, urging him not to worry about the trivial matters and just enjoy himself. The fat-ass king smiles, calling Patrick a dependable person. Patrick then whispers to Roderick, telling him that there is trouble at the Knight Academy, so Helen is requesting his assistance. Roderick simply tells Patrick that if the need arises, he will go himself. Roderick then walks off, telling Patrick that he is leaving the guard duty to him in the meantime. Patrick acknowledges the order, but deep down, he wants a chance to meet Aster face to face so that they can talk, since they are the only ones who worry about the future of Elmheim. Back at the academy, Aster heads to Maze's office to talk to him about the duel rite. Maze lets him know that he is aware of the rite because it is the traditional exhibition match that is held by the Knight Academy. Basically, in the year of a bountiful harvest, the two most outstanding candidates are chosen, and they are asked to compete before the king. A huge crowd is also invited to witness the rite, and Maze asks Aster why he is bringing up the duel rite. Aster finally reveals his intention, telling Maze that he wants him to recommend him as one of the competing candidates. Aster hears that the winner of the rite gets an honorary knight's cross from the king himself. This is proof that they have been recognized as a superior knight, and it is also a sign of the king's approval, which is why Aster wants the medal. Maze shocks him, refusing his proposal, and Aster asks him why he is rejecting his offer. Maze admits that Aster is talented since he has the 7 wings to boast. However, he tells him that if he goes berserk again in front of the king, the responsibility will fall on him. He tells Aster that his most likely opponent is Julius, and he asks Aster if he is confident that he can even take on Julius without ending up the same way he did the last time. Maze then tells Aster that if what he wants is a medal, he doesn't need to go through the duel rite. He mentions that he can just do what his sister did and slowly build up a list of achievements over time. Maze mentions that this is how most knights earn their recognition, which is through steady and honest work. Aster disagrees, saying this would be too slow because at the moment he doesn't have the power to protect his family and friends from House Elmheim. Aster says that this is exactly why he wants to reach a position where no one would dare to touch, and his plan is to do it before anyone gets hurt. Maze laughs when he realizes that Aster is trying to use the honor of being recognized by the king as his shield. Aster then adds that it might be the only chance he will get for a 1-versus-1 duel with Julius. Aster mentions that he cannot just let Julius be because he is just going to graduate and get out of his grasp. Aster plans to crush Julius, a member of the House of Elmheim, in front of the king and the massive crowd. Aster speaks out in frustration, saying a golden opportunity like this might never come again, which is why he doesn't want to miss it. Aster then speaks out, telling Maze that he doesn't know his endgame, but he can see that he is not loyal to House Elmheim. Just then, Aster shocks Maze by bowing to him while asking that he lend him his strength to take on House Elmheim. Maze is dumbstruck seeing Aster respectfully ask him to bet on him again. Maze admits that he is surprised that Aster actually bowed to him, which is something he has never done to the Duke or the 6th head of the house. Maze then gets up from his seat, telling Aster that since he is humble, he is going to give him a chance. He tells Aster that if he can make sure he will keep the 7 wings under control and stop them from going berserk, he is going to consider recommending him. However, to do this, he has to learn more about the 7 wings, and he has a specialist for him. Maze then tells Aster where he needs to go, where he will meet this strange specialist, who appears to be an important person. The person Aster was sent to ends up being the headmaster, Mimir, and he looks really happy to see Aster. He tells Aster that he has been waiting to have a long conversation with him since he possesses the 7-wing crest. Aster knows who Mimir is, even though he looks like a typical unassuming old man. This doesn't mean he is a pushover because he was once a famous royal knight who dedicated his knowledge to the prosperity of the nation, so he is basically a true magic specialist. Aster figures out that he is truly the best person to show him the way when it comes to learning more about the 7 wings. Aster excitedly asks the principal if he knows how to control the 7 wings, and the man confidently assures him that he does. Mimir finds it hard to hide his excitement, telling Aster that no one is more interested in the 7 wings than he is. He suddenly turned around, grabbing Aster's shirt to reveal the 7-winged crest on his back. Mimir is completely overwhelmed by it, as if he has stumbled upon gold. He talks about how the lines are exhibiting so much mana that it gives him goosebumps. While he is busy doing this, other workers standing around are staring at him like he is some kind of creep. Aster finally manages to wrestle the old man off his body, and Mimir apologizes for getting carried away, claiming that he is always really curious when it comes to the crests. Aster already whipped out his sword since he was already convinced that the old man was out to get him. Mimir then mentions that he is in a bind, and Aster asks him what he means by this. Mimir mentions that those who bear the 7-wing crest are extremely rare. Mimir mentions that there are loads of books on other crests, but when it comes to the 7 wings, all they have is nothing but speculation. Mimir tells Aster that when it comes to the current day and age, he is most likely the one who knows the 7 wings better. Aster is shocked to hear this, since he is completely clueless. He exclaims, asking the man what he is supposed to do, and Mimir tells him that there is a way. They walk into a sacred room, and Mimir tells Aster that all he has to do is ask someone who possesses the 7 wings. There is an altar in the room that carries a book, and Mimir explains to Aster that crests were originally gifts that were bestowed upon humans by spirits. Aster replies that he is aware of this, but he can't say he has seen one of the spirits himself. Mimir assures him that the spirits actually exist, but the majority have vanished from the world. Mimir then claps his hands, and with it emerges a dragon statue with 7 wings from the book. Aster is completely blown away, and Mimir explains to him that the spirits established a class system based on the number of wings that they were born with. Among them, those with 7 wings were called the Great Spirits, since they possess unique powers that set them apart from all others. They could do amazing things like manipulate the weather, revive the dead, and some could even travel through time, basically standing on the pinnacle of existence. The moment Aster hears that they could travel through time, it catches his attention, leaving him to wonder if it is the same power that helped him regress. Mimir then tells Aster that a great spirit is sealed within the book, and if he can meet and speak with the spirit directly, he should be able to finally control the 7 wings. He adds that Aster might even gain power that is way beyond what he dreamed of. Mimir lets him know something important, and this is the fact that the spirit inside the book has a crazy temperament. In addition to this, he absolutely hates humans. So Aster should be prepared to meet hell if he later meets the spirit. Aster asks Mimir why the dragon hates humans so much, and Mimir replies that humans betrayed the spirit in the past, which is why he ended up getting trapped inside the book. Aster finally understands why the spirit is bitter, but at the same time, he is weirded out by the fact that he has to meet a spirit inside a book to ask for guidance. Nonetheless, he knows that he has no choice because it is something he has to do. The moment Aster touches the book, his 7-wing crest starts resonating with the spirit inside, generating a bright golden light. Moments later, Aster finds himself amidst a ruined city currently on fire. There is carnage everywhere, and Aster is trying to understand what is happening when he is suddenly attacked from behind. He reacts and turns around to block the attack with his sword, only to see that he is holding his former sword. In addition, the clothes he is wearing are the same ones he wore when he was a soldier. This leaves him wondering what is happening to him, but at the same time he figures out that he has to cut his way out of the mess. Suddenly, he notices something weird, and this is the fact that he can't use mana. He is forced to leap backwards to create some distance between himself and his attacker. Before he knows it, the attacker gets more reinforcements who dive on him, calling him a rebel and an Elmheim dog that needs to be struck down. Suddenly, a powerful strange person appears from behind, cutting down Aster's attackers with a single swing of his sword. Seeing who the person is, Aster is completely dumbfounded because this is someone whom he believed to be dead. The people who saved him turned out to be Dallas and Grion, and they are even addressing him as Aster. Aster speaks up in curiosity, telling Dallas that he is supposed to be dead, but this only pisses Dallas off. He asks Aster what he means by this, demanding to know if he wants him dead. Dallas walks closer to Aster, reminding him that they are on a battlefield, so he won't mind adding him to the list of casualties. Dallas places his swords around Aster's neck, but Aster just stands there in confusion, trying to understand what is going on because Dallas should actually be dead. Seeing how cold Aster is, Dallas almost loses his mind as he screams at Aster, asking him why he is staring at him weirdly. Grion grabs Dallas from behind, telling him that they don't have time for Aster because their father's attack will soon begin. Just then, Roderick appears in the sky, unleashing a powerful spell, while Aster watches in fear because this was the same scene he saw in his past life. Roderick lets loose of the spell, burning up his enemies while boasting about the power of his 7 wings. It finally dawns on Aster that what he is currently experiencing are memories from when he was Ash. Back in the past, at this time, was when the largest rebellion in the history of the Dorisil Kingdom happened. Roderick killed the king, and he made himself the new ruler of the country, which ultimately sparked a civil war between the Elmheim faction and the anti-Elmheim faction. This was the same war that Aster experienced before he finally died. He later met with Roderick to give a report about how most enemy forces have given up their arms. Roderick doesn't think the war is over, telling him that until he claims the head of all the rebels, it is not the end. Roderick then tells Aster that the remnants of the rebel army are hiding in the Alv Highlands, located in the east. Roderick orders Aster to find them and wipe them out. Aster acknowledges this, and Roderick hands him a box filled with items called the Fallen Crest, telling him to use it alongside his squad members. Apparently, it is an artificial wing crest that temporarily increases one's magic power, and Roderick tells him that with this, a wingless like him should be capable of holding out against knights. Aster then shocks Roderick by saying he is aware that the Fallen Crest not only gives magical power. Roderick is stunned to hear this, but before he knows it, Aster gets to his feet and drives his sword into Roderick. It turns out that whoever uses the crest suffers something strange in exchange for power. Aster yells at Roderick, telling him that they are not his tools while asking him how many people he thinks have died thanks to the war he started. Suddenly, Aster is hit with a shocker as Roderick's body vanishes before his eyes, while a voice accompanies it, telling Aster that no matter what he does, he won't be able to change his own destiny, his past, and even his future. Out of nowhere, Aster finds himself elsewhere, leaving him completely stunned. He is wondering where he is when he hears someone call him captain from behind. He turns around to see that he is standing in front of his former squad members, who are asking him why he is spacing out in the middle of a mission. Aster can't believe that he is standing in front of the wingless squad, who are soldiers who lack magic power just like him. He and his squad had fought through numerous battlefields and overcame countless crises together. They were his comrades, and in the end, they all died, leaving him behind. Aster wonders if he returned to the past, but he trashes the thought, believing that it is just a memory. However, he wonders why he is being shown the past. One of them taps Aster, telling him to pull it together because they are already in enemy territory and they have no idea where the enemy is hiding. Just then, Aster tells them that they can't stay there because they are in danger. He yells at his men, telling them to fall back because the enemy is already waiting to ambush them just right ahead. His squad members believe that he is just spewing trash, reminding him that they can't even turn back from that point because they are also going to be killed. He hasn't even finished his statement when an arrow comes flying from a distance, impaling and killing the dude. Enemies appear overhead and the squad roars out in panic because they have fallen into an ambush. Before they know it, they get overrun using magic power, and seeing this, some of the squad members whip out the fallen crest that he was given. Aster sees them try to use it and he yells at them to stop, but before he can warn them, they have already pushed the crest into their body. This immediately gives off a dark energy that results in a forced transformation, which turns them into flying beasts. They run wild, cutting down everything in front of them, and in the end, what was left was nothing but bodies from both sides. Even Aster was completely decimated, and not long after this, Julius arrived on the battle scene. One of the transformed squad members tries to get Julius to help him, but Julius mercilessly kills the dude. Within an inch of his life, Aster asks Julius what he is doing there, and Julius confidently tells him that they just finished hunting down the remnants, which is thanks to Aster's squad acting as decoys. Julius teases Aster, asking him why he is still alive. It suddenly dawns on Julius that he didn't use the fallen crest, and Aster painfully tells Julius that his comrades are humans and they don't deserve to die the way they did. Julius mocks the dead, and Aster finally gets a grasp on the situation. He remembers that the real enemy is Elmheim, which is why he has to wipe them out. However, he tells whoever it is showing him his past trauma to show themselves. Julius believes that Aster is talking to him, but Aster cuts him down like the background character he is, telling him that his past isn't some sideshow attraction. The scene finally becomes visible and clear, and the seven-winged spirit descends from the sky to honor Aster's wish. Aster finally gets to see the spirit in the flesh, while telling him that he heard he was pissed. The spirit talks about how he was confined in a book, but Aster taunts him, reminding him that he looks comfortable there. Aster then asks the spirit what it is that he is trying to achieve by showing him the hallucinations. Aster is also curious to know what the spirit knows about his memories from his past life. However, the spirit remains mute, and Aster can't believe that he is getting snubbed by a spirit. Aster finally tells the spirit that the only reason he is there is because he was told that meeting him would teach him how to control the seven wings. Aster mentions that he has no intention of fighting, and he is still urging the spirit to say something when the spirit cooks up a magic breath. The spirit hurls the attack directly at Aster, but Aster manages to get out of the way just in time. The blast hits the ground so hard that it destroys everything it touches. The spirit lets out his rage, talking about his desire to eradicate the Elmheim bloodline down to the last drop. The spirit introduces himself, revealing that he is Fafnir. Without holding back, Fafnir unleashes another blast at Aster, forcing him further backwards. Aster yells at Fafnir, telling him to stop attacking because all he wants to do is talk. Before he knows it, Fafnir dashes toward him, and Aster is shocked at how fast he is, even though he is huge. Aster gets knocked backwards, and Fafnir follows through with another powerful blast that forces Aster to block with his weapon. The moment Fafnir sees the sword, he recognizes it as Graham, and he mentions that it is the sword that took the lives of numerous of his kind. Aster is surprised, and he asks Fafnir if he knows about the sword. Fafnir then tells him that Elmheims like him are the ones who made it as a tool to kill spirits. Fafnir is surprised that Aster doesn't know this, but still points it at him. Aster is stunned by this, since his father never mentioned anything about the sword killing spirits. He's busy thinking about this when Fafnir knocks him backward again. Fafnir expresses his anger, saying he has been waiting for the moment someone with Elmheim blood would appear before him so he could finally enact his revenge. Aster grabs his head in pain, trying to tell Fafnir that he has it all wrong because he is not an Elmheim. Fafnir leaps into the air and unleashes another magic breath at Aster while telling him to keep his mouth shut. Aster manages to block the attack, and after the smoke clears, he finally gets to see Fafnir's battered body. Aster asks Fafnir what the injuries on his bodies are, and Fafnir yells at him, telling him that Elmheims like him are the ones who led humans and began hunting spirits. He tells Aster that Elmheims basically forgot the debt that they owed them for bestowing the wing crests upon them, just so that they could claim the power for themselves. Aster is shocked to hear all of this, and Fafnir continues by revealing that the whole thing happened about a century ago, but he has never forgotten them. Fafnir dashes toward Aster, grabbing him with his mouth, closing down his jaws on him. Aster cries out in pain, and Fafnir mentions that his body may never leave where it currently is, but his soul should be able to adapt to a vessel possessing the 7 wings. He mentions that Aster would have heard their voices before, and this was the voice telling him to wipe out the Elmheims. Fafnir mentions that what he heard is the collective will of the spirits to destroy the Elmheims. Fafnir continues closing down his jaw on Aster while urging him to surrender his body to him because he is nothing more than a mouthpiece to voice out their hatred. Aster has finally had enough, and he pours his power into his sword to break free from Fafnir's jaws. Aster launches his own attack while telling Fafnir that even though he sympathizes with him, he is not about to become a tool for him to enact his revenge. Aster delivers a powerful slash that causes the spirit so much pain that he screams out in agony.